It's the next day after dawn, before noon. The birch square has been assembled with particularity by Reik. Many folk from Skalaholt, barring thralls, of course, flock to observe the honourable duel as the rising sun burns away the morning mist. It is known and spoken against amongst the people that if Anthrmnir of Helagaskr prevails, that Halagrim Magisson is sworn to pay insult for damages done to his bondsman, to give over 2 of his thralls to the victor. But if Halagrim prevails, Anthrmnir will pay for the injuries done to Halagrim, sustained, and to pay a wergild there to his mother, and publicly apologise for the insult given. And so there's much excitement, some barracking for the side of Halagrim, and others who maybe have felt the cruelty of him and his brothers, secretly wishing that you'll prevail. Knut and many others are taking wagers on it, and there's much talk, but once those allowed move up to the mound in view of the Bay of Skalaholt, an eerie silence falls over the procession, and all such betting and rumour mongering ceases, and a quiet reverence is adopted as each tries to mimic Snorrison as he stands on the outskirts of the birch square. Maga and her retinue are there to watch Edis Ravenhair standing behind her mistress, watching on with a cool gaze to rival the cool autumnal wind that rises up off the bluff. You can hear gulls in the bay squawking demands for breakfast from the fishermen, and feel the sea breeze carrying the smells of Skalaholt's market swirl around the gathering. Fish, salt, mutton, and wood smoke. And taste the residue of the food you broke your fast on this morning. Oily herring, wild rosemary oatcakes, strip of salted beef and some black ale to soften it in. A sombre, quiet breakfast. You can see Helagrim is in council with Steelor and Othring, who are arming and equipping their brother in a throat-to-knee chain coat and sporting a red painted shield with the image of a bear blazoned across it to one arm while fixing his axe to the other as he prepares to enter as your own champion must. Ravenhair leans down to speak quietly to her mistress, who's adopted a pose probably quite similar to Yngvar, one of grave sternness and outward impartiality for what's to come. Many of the Siohester crewmen have well wished from a distance to you and Anthrmnir, and clutch their amulets of Thor, praying that their champion will prevail over their natural rivals. And Anthrmnir is there with whoever else you'd have ordered or wished, equipping you with whatever you need before you'll step to the birch square. It looks like there's so many words behind him, as there usually is, but for once he does not spill any of them, just taking to equipping you as you've trained him, with the same silence as you quite often adopt. Finally, fixing the last piece, he'll step back from you and give a nod of his head, not so quite a lower bow as he was in his enthrallment, but still one of respect as he steps back. And you can hear the chink of arms of your opponent beyond, and the hubbub of the crowds murmuring. I wish you well, Lord. Win back my family if you can. I will pay you back somehow, some way, someday. And he'll step back to join the others well away from the priority assembly.
Yeah, he gets a simple nod and from there as he just kind of gazes forward. There's a vein in his neck that's kind of pulsing on the opposite side as he stretches the muscles and lumbers up a bit. He's digging deep down within himself to get that beast that lives within him ready for what's coming.
Adis Ravenhair will like stand up and move away from where her mistress is seated near to Yngvar, and she'll step behind you, Reik, in like a visual display of support to how like you will officiate from here. And many eyes fall away from her or their mother Maga or from Yngvar to you as you adopt that like semblance and posture that instantly like changes the atmosphere and gauge of gathering like this of the faithful. And that like murmuring that was just above the sound of silence dissipates, but for like the wind and gulls, of course, as the two men step near, and all eyes look to you and wait to listen.
Yeah, Reik is standing like almost like a perfect statue. His movements slow and still, if at all. And his eyes would kind of look towards the two people there, ready to meet in the square. Of course, we all understand the rules here that Odin himself watches over, as do all the gods, and that their law binds the results, the laws that have already been spoken, the terms. I'm sure we will see no problems. And then if there was nothing else that needed to be tended to or clarified, he would look to the two men to make sure that they were ready.
Anthrmnir gives a grunt and a short, curt nod.
Helagaskr will clutch up his axe and slam it twice into the boss of his shield and step forward, nodding from within the shadows of his nasal helm.
Odin will decide which of you is right. Show him what reason he might have to believe you. You may begin.
Helagaskr briskly moves and steps over the invisible barrier up from the birch angles and into the square, planting his feet firmly and raising his shield up to guard his midsection, and placing the haft of his axe just shy of the rim of his shield, ready to bring it to bear.
Anthrmnir keeps his eye on Helagaskr as he readies himself, and then he'll look down to his own shield in his hand, shake it free, throw it off to the side, and stand just with his axe. And the smile that is constant usually when he's in battle starts to play across his face.
There's many unsuppressed like gasps and like whispers amongst people as you like cast off the shield. People like catching the symbolic gesture and noticing the weakness it brings, or perceived weakness, perhaps. And many eyes fall away from the law speaker to you, Anthrmnir,
Sorry,
as Helagaskr awaits you in the square.
often fat. Yes, as it starts to play over, he'll wait for Helagaskr to take one step forward, and as soon as that foot hits the ground, Anthrmnir charges, launches himself almost into the air, and brings down a swinging blow, no restraint at all behind it, putting as much force and using gravity to help to land behind Helagask's shield for a natural 20 for the first roll.
Nice.
It's 14 damage.
Can I get you to roll a d20, please, sir?
What? That's a 7.
Oh, and what weapon are you using on him? An axe?
Yeah, the hatchet.
Oh, he brings up the rim of his shield, and so it drives it wide from like the side of his chest or like bicep, where it would have like cut deeply. Grinds up the male coif and bursts in below like the nasal helm's rim, cutting his ear in half. Like the bottom half like flaps away, and like blood drizzles out the lengths. And there's like a sucking noise as you pull your axe free, and a gasp of pain that comes from within like the echoey recess of Halagrim's helm. If he sustains the same crit again, he'll become deafened, and he is deafened in that ear and loses it, and makes perception checks reliant on hearing at disadvantage henceforth.
Yeah, I'd imagine that the reaction to that blow is to quickly bring up the shield, which the Anthrmnir's Ygritte hammer against as he misses the next swing.
Reeling back in pain from that, his training kicks in, and he brings the shield up a second time and this time your axe just bites into the oak wood, marring the bear imprinted there in blood. Trying to gather his senses, he'll do so and unleash his onslaught. He'll just stand right where he is, planting his feet for leverage and bring down his weapons to bear. He's going to do multi-attack with his cruel axe for a miss and a hit for 22, and you'll take 11 slashing damage as it cuts through your defenses. So you block the first with the haft of your own axe. The second bites into you. Then as a bonus action, after making an attack, you'll use his shield to shove against you. But you like step aside, spinning clear and forcing him to like take a few steps forward through like the wet black earth, and then have to like spin around and round on you as he misses with that. And that's where he'll end his turn.
He'll take full advantage of the unsure footing of Halagrim. As he starts to foam at the mouth, he'll take a quick step back before lunging in with 2 chopping axe swings, 25 and 24. So 23 damage altogether.
The second one of those like cuts a leather cord which spills free like a square of mail at his chest, and blood drizzles over that, dripping down heavy and hot onto his knees and then into the earth, mingling with that from his ear, which turns his like bright chain to a crimson down the left side. Brutal strikes, given like the wet wheezing noise that's coming to him, and like the drunken manner to his gait now as he steps from side to side, trying to keep you in some semblance of confoundment while he brings his shield up to guard his vitals, even though it like pains him to do so. He will try his exact same tack again, 2 wild strikes, and then while your defenses are up, a bash with the rim of his shield, try and send you sprawling. So it's going to be a hit, a miss, and then with his shove, a hit. So I'll need you to... Oh no, you don't need to make anything. It's just simply it knocks you prone and you take the damage. Do you want me to give you in increments, or can I give it all in one go?
No, all in one go is fine.
Excellent. So it's going to be 19 slashing and piercing damage. And so you're knocked prone at that. Where is it? He's got a thing here. Okay, Thrall Catcher. With that second strike, sorry, the first strike that he got that hit you, he'll use his Thrall Catcher, which means you'll have to make a DC 15 Strength saving throw. That won't be at disadvantage because this should have happened before you were proned.
Okay. Oh, shit. A 21.
Nice. Yeah, so he's got like a beak on like the bottom side of his axe meant to like hook into your shield or flesh and like rip you down. He tries this technique with it, giving it away, but fails for now. But still manages to send you sprawling. They can't take advantage of it as it's your turn to act now.
As Einvigi falls to the ground, he'll try and throw his axe, but ineffectively, whooshing by Alagrim's head. I'm prone, but I'm not grappled, so I can't stand up. Yeah. So I'll stand up and almost like a tackle, throw myself at him, and I'm going to try and grapple him. And it'll be 23. Yeah, 23.
That's what he got. But in the event of a tie, the aggressor wins. So despite how he struggles, you manage to wrap your arms around him or like grab hold of his shield or however you wish.
Yeah, it's bear hug, essentially. That's all for
And
me.
is that all for your turn, sir? Okay. Rather than to try and break free of the grapple, he'll just slice out with his axe twice for a miss and a crit, and then a shove with the shield, which is a crit. Which is going to knock you prone for the shield bash, which will break the grapple. He's going to use the Thrall Catcher on his crit, which means you need to make a DC 15 strength save or be grappled by the barb of his axe.
Let me do math quickly. That's a 15 exactly.
Nice. So it like stabs into you, but then he like pulls it and it rips free rather than like digging into like rib or muscle. Here comes the damage. Okay, so it's only 13 slashing damage. And I'll need a D20 and a D10, please. I'll have the result of the D20 first.
Natural 20 on the D20.
Oh, I'll have to look that up in another document, but he'd like this wound is maybe after one that he like has missed and it's gone and thunked into the ground, so that when it bites into you, it just sends like dirt and who knows what kind of detritus into it. And this wound, should you live from here, will like begin to fester and you'll succumb to disease from it. Not succumb, sorry, but become afflicted by disease, I should say. We'll sort that out afterwards because it's a long-term thing and will not affect you in the immediacy.
Okay.
But a grisly wound that will fester. And the result from the D10, sir?
3.
3. This is for the shield. It smashes you in the jaw, nearly knocks you unconscious, gives you a concussion, which will give you 1 level of exhaustion. So ability checks are at disadvantage.
Oh, okay.
So just drives the axe in, rips it free, and then while he, in that same motion, brings the shield around, it catches you on the chin and sends you sprawling down to the ground. And people like peer over each other's shoulders or look wide-eyed to seeing if you'll rise. All the while, blood spills out of your opponent, lathering down his left side.
What was the damage? Sorry, I missed
13 slashing.
13.
Oh, sorry, and hit with the shield too. That was for a crit. So 1, so 7 all up. 7 damage from the shield crit, bludgeoning.
Okay. Anthrmnir's going to stand back up again, rushing in yet again with another tackle. This time it's 22 for the grapple.
He got a 22 all up, which is you succeed in the event of a tie. Did you do that with advantage though? Disadvantage because of the exhaustion though?
Disadvantage, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you grapple him.
Once he's grappled, Anthrmnir is going to start pummeling on him, using his fists against the kind of dented part of the nasal helm, crushing it into his face. The first one's a natural 20.
Nice.
And for
Since
the
you
offhand,
said what you wanted to do, I'll say that's the crit. So the nasal helm punched down into his eye, obscuring his view, rendering him at disadvantage to attacks unless he takes the helm off with an action, like to get free of it, where you've like busted it into his face.
he'll take 8 damage for that.
Okay. Was that part of 2 attacks? Like, was there going to be another attack?
There was another offhand coming in, but it missed.
Okay. That would have been advantage because his current condition gives advantage.
That's all for me.
Okay, cool. He's bloodied at this point quite badly, though still thinks that he can take you down and feels the burning shame that in front of his mother's assembled people, he might lose this when he felt so certain. So we'll strike on and try and cut you down, not aiming for the shield or for non-vital parts like some might in that holmgang relating to like a lesser dispute, but with all the savagery of like one as if in war. And you're not prone at the moment, so his attacks are just regular.
No, he is grappled though.
Was he prone?
No,
Okay,
standing
cool.
grapple.
So he just can't move. And he'll try and shield bash as well. So at this point, bleeding so badly from so many wounds, and like with the dinted helm puncturing through like one side of his head and blood sheeting out from there, his strength is fast fading, and all 3 of his attacks are misses. So they're obviously like slowed and predictable, and you like position yourself accordingly so that he expels the energy and blood loss with no result by hitting into you.
Yeah,
At this, like Mother Maga, like stands up in her chair, centering the hound at her foot to scatter, and Idis kind of loses her stillness for a moment. Her young son, who serves Adis, though, seems calm as he watches on. You others would note, but I guess in where you are, Anthrmnir, it's just a ring of birch and steel and blows and blood.
yeah, it's I mean, I imagine he can feel the kind of the haft of the axe as Halagrim's blows are futile against him. He's going to squeeze and almost try and lift the man while he continues to just crunch in at his jaw and his nose for the 22, 21, and a miss.
Okay. So you're lifting him up with his feet, trying to crush him with one hand and bashing him with the other.
Basically.
Grim.
He'll take 7 damage from that and a further 6 for being grappled, so 13 all up.
You brutalize him. There's a crunching noise inside his helm and like a sucking noise of like one choking on teeth, and he reels back from you, severely bloodied and nearly slain. He drops the axe into the earth and falls to his knee sidelong, clutching at his helm, blood running out from there. And people like move to the very precipice of the birch square, gawking and on looking as it widens, and he like coughs blood and teeth. He like taps the earth nearby to his axe, like reaching for it in like a brief paroxysm, maybe like fearing death, and like eyes, some piercing, others gawking, look to you, law speaker.
Yeah,
And
Reik
it's
will
your
like
turn,
hold up his
Anthrmnir.
hand.
Oh, sorry. You can...
Oh, if he's, I guess you can just yield in a fight like this. Would you, even if the terms were to the death? Like I don't, unless there's like a historical thing that I don't know.
It's like it's a weird curveball Iscloft conundrum. Sorry, like I'm not really sure, and neither are the people. So they look to you. It was called to be for the death, but now at that point, this man is yielding.
Yngvar will stand and like look at Anthrmnir and give him this look of like, don't move until Reik speaks.
The Odin has decided this man yields. and so admits defeat and admits to all wrongdoings and all terms that have been set.
As if that's a signal, the brothers of the man, Steer Collar, Othring, will move forward, like rushing to his side and begin to like prise off the coif and helmet, and see the ruin wrought in his face, his eyes are badly wounded and like puffed up, the bridge of his nose broken, and his front teeth smashed in. Some of them they have to like turn him on his side to like cough them out with great gouts of spit and blood. He'll like rise, helped to his knees, and then try and stand but fail, calling in a stupor like, I yield, please. Pathetic, more so than he was when you beat him in the alehouse, Anthrmnir, more so when you beat him in the mud of Rauderclouder.
Thralls will be brought. They belong to Anthrmnir now, as well as all the other terms. We expect a full apology from Helagrim as soon as he's physically able to do so.
Mother Maga will give a motion, and you'd note, being close to her, Yngvar, it's quicker than most that she's given for one of her warriors, not one of her sons, to go and grab those thralls and bring them in a public show before everyone. I guess she like equals you in like fervor to keep this from becoming a blood feud or anything that could mar mutually beneficial arrangements before winter is like to fall.
Yeah.
And you'd note that in her body language, it's that same tenseness or terseness that you'd have. And quickly, this Skraeling woman and her toddler are brought. They look much beleaguered before the folk, and like with public ostentation or like gesture, handed over towards Anthrmnir, near where like Ranulf is, and a couple of the warriors will like come forth to receive them as you stand there, dripping blood in the square. Looking over at your rival, you can see his brothers like fussing over him, and you wonder if he'll even live.
I do not need to say, but with the result of this being decided by the gods, there's no need for further conflict. All issues have been resolved. There will be no further fighting. And then he'll turn away from the crowd and go back towards Yngvar, his duties being completed.
Yeah, he'll look at his crew who are probably standing around, just with this like meaningful look of like, there will be no fighting.
Mother Maga will have 200 hack silver brought up with like an opened bag to show like the crowd, and then like pull tight to hand over to you and Anthrmnir to pay for the damage done to Ranulf, in addition to like the thralls who are handed over. And like a fierce glare from her after the law speaker's words have been eaten up by the breeze and the gulls, she'll send the majority of the crowd to disperse and back to their ordained toil or station, while she like moves back to speak briskly and whispers to Ravenhair. Jorah Domhnall, who stands behind you, will like lean forward on like the stick that he was holding and say, I wonder if it not be best, Lord, if we would leave this place, even as the victors. This thing could sour still. And he kind of gives like a wary look around at how some of some of the warriors of Scalaholt share the cold, cool gaze of Steer Collar, the Silent, as he like looks over you rivals.
In Corpse Hall, they say that a man you killed keeps your seat. We should work hard to make peace and have Anthrmnir drink with Helagrim.
He like just gives like a toothy smile at that, and then mutters something that sounds like, to see those two sitting to share a drink. They like step back, noting that Mother Mag is like returned to her position nearby to you. She kind of gives like an officiatory like nod to you, as in like well, it's all done and well ended. There was no death.
We need to remedy this quickly, Maga, before something festers. We should have Anthrmnir and Helagaskr shake hands and make peace publicly.
That was not part of the agreement, and I wonder if it might not provoke them further, these two wild dogs, to fighting, your man and my son.
If we do not, I fear that my crew and yours, that there will be hostility that lingers. This will not be forgotten quickly.
Wise course, Blackhand. There'll be a feast tonight in honor of how the gods have spoken, and all will see that the matter has been well resolved, and all things done in accordance with the law. Be no further fighting to that. Maybe even gifts exchanged to soften injury and such.
Yeah, he nods at that.
I'll see to mine if you'll see to yours.
I will.
It's best if you get going on the next favorable winds. I mean, disrespect.
I agree. Hopefully our next visit will be more peaceable.
She puts her hands on her hips, looking over, like surveying your brutal, grim, violent bastards and her brutal, violent, grim bastards, and doesn't look so believing that could happen. But she'll nod after a time and move back amongst her people, leaving you with yours.
Yngvar will try and fight Anthrmnir whenever that's possible.
And nearby to him is Kjartan, Ygritte, and the others who have stood like a core while the rest wash away back to Skalaholt and down the hill, and Reik in the distance collecting the birch limbs, going to observe and dispose of them in like the secret, proper ways. And so in this like area, you can find him still bleeding from his wounds. Ranulf, who usually tisks and fusses at his side, is away from him. With his arms extended towards both of the thralls who are given away, and they're tearfully like speaking and muttering to each other as you approach. Knut the Wagerer will like take a few like bits of hack that were given over, but quickly like pocket them and stand to attention when you draw close.
Yeah, Yngvar has a face like thunder. He's clearly angry, and he'll like walk up and say, "Everyone but Ygritte, leave." And then
They'll quickly do that, and those few who like kind of take like more than a millisecond to comply, one of the older men will like call out some job that needs doing and hurry them to it.
He'll squat down in front of Anthrmnir because I imagine he's sitting, and he'll like lean on the sayax and like turn his head to the side. This is not a game, Anthrmnir. I understand that you want to hurt people. We have put lots of work into this alliance and many others, and if you, everywhere we go, fight at a whim, you cannot be useful to me. Your ability to kill does not outweigh my ability to make deals. And I would rather have 100 men than one talented killer.
Your words seem to... it's almost like Anthrmnir isn't listening, and just when you're on the kind of verge, well, I guess you're already exasperated, but on the verge of the anger rising, his eyes will snap to you, showing that he was listening. It was the predetermined course. As if you should know what that means.
I think Yngvar like looks at Ygritte for a second, like maybe she knows.
And she shrugs. He won.
He won. At the potential cost of making enemies of Maga and her crew, potential cost of making this settlement, a very useful settlement, inhospitable to us, potential cost of all of our crew getting involved in a blood feud with Maga's crew. Those are not worth the costs.
I didn't say it was. I said he won.
Tonight, Anthrmnir, you'll sit by Helagaskr and you will drink with him and you will be friendly with him. You will shake his hand and you will exchange gifts.
He'll chew at his jaw as he ponders that, but after a while he will give a nod.
Yngvar just like accepts that and stands. And sort of like as he walks away, just like sort of shakes his head to himself, like, who is this man?
You fight well, Anthrmnir, but perhaps you should keep it away from the Birch Circle and our allies, hmm?
He'll give one of his trademark shrugs and use the back of his hand to wipe some of the blood away, flicking it onto the ground.
She like looks the direction Yngvar's gone. At least we can keep it away from Yngvar. Hmm? You and I think, understand each other. But if you're going to cause trouble, it's best not to let Yngvar know. Plus, it makes his job much easier if he has to kill you later.
There's a long pause after you say that, and then there's a sound like a mountain moving, and you realise it's actually Anthrmnir laughing. Although the morph doesn't really spread to his face.
And she'll give you like this little sly grin. Good. Clean some of the blood off. You look like a mega son.
So a couple of hours later on, just after noon, while you're in council with the Galderman, there's like a clearing of throat from Little Tor, who like walk in with one of the others, and there's a figure shifting behind them. Lord, that Asblotha, he's here, Ranulf the Learned. He wants to speak to you, Lord. I told him to, he goes to swear.
Send him in.
He'll like shrug and step back, letting a jittery Ranulf like step into the room cautiously.
Yes?
Lord, I'm sorry, I know you're a busy man, but I've heard things from the widow of my brother that I thought it might be prudent to tell you. I would tell my friend, he says the word Anthrmnir, but he is a storm at the moment.
Ygritte like rolls her eyes. We don't need to hear of the hardships of any thrall. Hmm?
Not of her hardships, lady, he says, which probably like summons a scoff from you.
I would hear it.
She said that before the Northmen came, my brother, now dead, Holger, that he took the best of his herd northwest up into the mountains, and northeast up into the mountains, away from the Vale, and had only returned whence he was taken by Helagaskr and his brutes, who slew them all and took the women and children as thralls, and butchered those sheep they did not take on to the market in Skalaholt. She says that if her gods and ours are kind, much or if not all of that herd may still be there, dwelling in those hills east of Holger's Vale. And that as your man here freed her from the prospect of a grim life, that she would have you know that, and that if it is whole, that it is yours, if it's even hers or ours to give. For I will take her as wife, Lord, and we'll live in Helagaskr by your leave if you'll have it, he says.
None of Maga's crew know this.
He shakes his head.
You are certain?
He thinks for a while, knowing the brevity, before nodding and then following up with a yes, Lord. I would bring the woman, but she's a scrael, and I feel your men would rebuke me for her company.
He thinks, scratches at his beard. You can marry her. You can go.
Thank you, Lord.
Ygritte. And he does this gesture come close so I don't have to speak loud enough so the other guys can hear me.
Yeah, she leans in on her elbows.
There is a huge amount of free wealth in those hills, but it is theft. And I do not steal.
No, you do not.
No, I do not.
But I think I might take a few men and do some exploring while we finish our time with Maga.
It is good to get the lay of the land.
I agree.
He'll shake his head sort of as if they've been discussing something and he's annoyed about it. No, absolutely not. And then he'll turn to one of the other people and scribble something down. And
Ygritte will kind of cross her arms. Fine. I'll be back in a few days. Maybe you'll have re-cleared your head by then.
Go then.
As you say, Jarl.
Yeah, and a couple of the more talkative men who were known to speak with some of those in the drinking holes at Skalaholt, hear that well-placed, those well-placed words, and will recollect them as Ygritte moves away from your group. Ranulf would return to the Siohest with what crew you've left in charge of it, Yngvar, where you are currently, Anthrmnir, and with briny seawater, Ahana and the now returned Ranulf are tending to your wounds as best they can, while this teary, skinny boy sits beyond whimpering, watching, rocking with the boat. You hear the grumble of men beyond, and then one summons something to make the other laugh. They go back to their inaudible as another bloody rag is wrung into the bay and cleansed with fresh seawater, and then wiped down the cuts at your midsection and knuckles and places you didn't know you'd hurt during the holmgang. And she seems less more at ease once Ranulf returns, though still not entirely. This scrael woman who'd serves in silence. I meant what I said, Lord Anthrmnir. I'll pay you back for this. I'll serve you as best I can. And he sees his widow wife tending to your wounds and gives a wincing, painful face. Whatever it takes, you can count on that.
Yeah, customary silent nod comes from Anthrmnir. As he gazes out into the water before looking back at the man, and he'll nod again.
Yeah. Thane Yngvar said that we can marry. I'll take Harold as my son now. We'll serve him as you serve him. Well, not as you serve him, but you will serve him. And he's saying that to you as well as to Ahana. who obviously like understands him, though doesn't act like she does. We will stay on the boat this evening and not go to the feast. I think that wise. He says that half like as a question to Hannah Chook and to yourself, but in the twin silence just nods to himself after a time and goes and like rinses out another red rag. Many people are like discussing the absence of the Thane's or Captain Blackhand's sister. She's like taken off with a few men up the headland, much to her brother's chagrin. Though at the feast tonight all seems cordial enough. Though many like are obviously like speaking and rumor mongering about the fight earlier before noon. They'll quieten when Anthrmnir and Helagaskr marched into the hall. And the other parties like seat at their like hierarchical places, and a public showing of friendship where Helagaskr with like busted lipped, like puffed up over eye, like a limp as he walks, and like a much stricken state, will groggily hand over a fine hunting horn carved with like bronze at the tips, and an axe of fine make in a well braided scabbard loop. Which he like presents as he's been told with like a groaning wince before he hands them over to you to exchange what baubles Yngvar has given over for you to gift. And once so is done, he'll extend his hand, like knuckles grazed, one finger broken, over towards you with like a drunken shake, even though he seems like sober with wrath. And people begin to wait with bated breath to see your response.
Much like most of what Anthrmnir does, it's a slow response. He flexes the hand, and the knuckles pop, and then he raises it out, extending it out rather, to shake Helagram's hand. There's no squeezing to show any kind of dominance or anything. It's just a simple, this must be done.
At that, many people like slam their tankards or ale horns on the tables or their hands, or like some even rise to their feet and call out, like relieving like a communal tension. And in that din, the dogs leans in closer with like a false smile and says, "I'll dance on your spine." And others like applaud and like clap each other on the back as all is settled. And the older, wiser folk think it well that a blood feud avoided. Maga next to you with Edis, Yngvar relaxes visibly at it and gives a signal for one of the female thralls who sings particularly well to take up like a northern song and for the thralls to bring out food.
Yngvar will, like,
sorry, yeah.
try and be jovial and like wander from table to table and like chat to some of the men and make sure that everyone's in good spirits and like things like that, and try and smooth over like any sort of ill feeling, or like if he sees like tables looking at each other of our men and their men, he would like encourage them to sit together and like play a game or something like that and try and encourage friendliness.
Yeah, it seems to like work amongst most of those assembled. Notably not upon Silent Steercollar, who just watches on gravely, nor from the religious one who serves Ravenhair called Rangval. But even like Othring will move from Halagram's side and mix among some of your men, as he may have been ordered by his own mother, and foster like what goodwill can be salvaged by like the brief violence, which now, to all intents and purposes, seems well over, as both like well bruised combatants like forced to sit at the head meat table to the view of all. Night like passes coolly. There's no like a great mirth in it, but a few people like take brief joy in the relief of tension at those that rivalry, and none make effort to like spoil the feast.
I think we'd want to take off like early the next day and try and like sail up the headland a bit, so that if Ygritte finds the herd, that she can like see our ship and like move down towards us in that direction without having to go back to Skalaholt.
Nice. Just as like the feast is finishing up, Mother Maga will be like one of the first to like leave, and like let it be known by her body language from amongst her warriors that there's no great like vomitorium levels of feasting to go on this evening. So it starts to melt away pretty early, but you'd notice Adis making eyes at you, and even though her lips don't move or her fingers don't twist in like secretive ways, Reik, it feels as if you're ensorcelled by her gaze and realize you've been looking at her for unknown moments before you like quickly find another place to look. When your eyes force you to check back sometime after, that the gaze is met again, implacable but meaningful somehow. You wonder at like the sudden urges and feelings that do not sit right with you, like given your age and wisdom.
Yeah, he'll like feel this subconscious tugging in his mind that seems to draw his attention. The strange essence that this person seems to have, and he'll like do his best to like avert his mind and eyes from it as the night goes on. Distrustful of what sorcery she may weave or have the potential to weave, would want no part of it.
And with those thoughts, it seems you're proof against whatever cunning ways she was employing, though it still doesn't free you of thinking of her before you pass asleep, whether in the hall of Skalaholt, recently made, or upon the deck of the Seahorse. The next morning is a flurry of activity aboard the Seahorse as the crew begin preparations to stock her and set her out to the bay before mid-morning, as is the captain's orders. And as is customary, a ship is sighted on the bay, and coming closer is revealed to be that a fat-bellied hull from Zealand, that vehicle of Carol called Coin Crow by people in these parts. And his dragon prayer was like pulled off and met with like cries and hellos from the docks as he pulls up close alongside your own Yngvar and Anthrmnir and Reik, as you, like the men, have been like set to work bringing things on board and preparing her to set off away from this place with the morning winds. Many men like look up and take a moment to like pause and wipe away like some sweat from their brows before going back to work under the harsh gazes of their taskmasters. Ygritte is still not returned, and though you do not expect her to, Yngvar.
Yeah,
But you note the arrival of this merchant and the other like sights of Skalaholt consistent with the last couple of days. Nothing to like set you ill at ease or anything like that. And the weather a good enough omen.
Yeah, I would just send someone to go and tell what's it called, Coin Crow, about Helagaskr, or I might go tell him myself that we are there now and we're looking for him to come and visit with like supplies and things.
Yeah, so maybe yourself and Anthrmnir and Reik can make your way across to where Coin Crow's ship is berthed, and where some thralls work under the stern gaze of straw-haired, tall-backed Zealand mercenaries. He's conducting his business with who would it be? Othring Magasin is there on behalf of his mother, making arrangements and learning the ways of rulership and commerce. He makes his way back with like a small assembly of advisors, and you can like push in front of a couple of like fishermen or craftsmen or shepherds from Skalaholt who have come to like trade with the Coin Crow, and under a fierce look and a show of teeth, they'll peel away so that you can walk up to him. He'll put down what he's holding and extends his arms out, making him look broader than he already is, and say, Hail, Captain Yngvar, or should I say Thane Balderson now. My congratulations. By Wotan and Dona you have been blessed. A ripe land beyond to plough, I hear, and all before the Flamesower's host pours south. Ha! And he'll like step forward and give you like a half greasy mock embrace.
Yeah, Yngvar will smile. Odin and Thor have been kind. And to your lawgiver, all of them. It has been a fortunate season. We're looking for you and all your stuff. He'll just like point at the huge ship to come and visit.
If I thought it worth my while, I could have my arm twisted to that, he says. I'm sure you have much by way of trade from taking such a place. All of the lambs in these parts have much wool for shearing.
Yes, there's plenty. You should come. It will be good. And they say that the Flamethrower will visit us soon. And so maybe you should stay a while.
I intend to head north, apply my trade to the Sklofen Jarls who now own the coasts north of here. Commerce is such, the coin would speak to me that I should not wait too long in your holdfast, though I'm welcome for the hospitality. If fate would have Uthal come while I'm there, then I'll let it, but I'll not linger, he says, for always I am to take to the sea and make the most of what fate's in stored. But come I will, Blackhand, come I will, he says.
Good. I look forward to hosting you.
I've come up from Halvafjord in the south, where Isbjornsson has fallen upon Homeland with Thormar the Fair and Skoll the Cursed. I did a mighty trade there and have come to share those spoils, thralls and such for those who've coin enough. They say Skoll was promised half of Skali in return for his aid, that he was slain at the siege. That land now is passed to his son Eric. They call him the Lame. Thormar the Fair asked no reward. Can you believe it? But that Isbjorn and his son Gorm would aid Thormar in the taking of Manavik, and he'll say this like as he like stretches his back and reaches out, not shaming you to like see it, as you like place requisite coin into his outstretched hand for the information, which is the most valuable thing that Carol applies his wares in.
Skoll is dead?
Aye, Lord, he fell in the siege of Homeland, though it was a great victory for Isbjornsson and his.
It's a shame. I called him brother.
Then I am sorry for you. From what I hear, he took 2 spears. Both were in the front, and he'll say that as he puts like a hand on your shoulder, like the only genuine act in a sea of merchantry.
At least he went well.
His son did not fight, but most of his father's bondsmen have gone over to him. Those that did not may sniff about for some drippings from Manavik, or perhaps stay on in Holmland. Who can know this, but that all men get cold in the coming months, and they'll look to settle down by a fire.
And Thormar asks no reward. Manavik he seeks then.
That's why I heard it, he says, which is a way of saying, like, yeah, I applied rumor mongering and like heard from all sorts of people, and coin was exchanged for this kind of information.
Interesting.
They say Thormar will march on it before winter comes. Any man with ambition to be lord around here will gobble up what he can before the hordes descend hungry from all the snow.
Indeed. Thankfully I have Helagaskr now. I'll be comfortable come winter.
And perhaps I can help you be more comfortable when I sail north from here, Lord. I expect I'll be here some days if the weather holds. And he looks out over the bay and its gulls and its clarity and smiles, taking it as an omen. But first I have to deal with that wench of the rope bear, Mother Mega, and she haggles more fiercely than you, Lord, he says with kindness.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Pleasure talking to you. And I guess he would give him like a little bit of hack silver for the information.
Yeah, he'll look at it weighing it in his hand for a while, forcing you to like put a bit more in there, but then he'll like smile and take it.
I do enjoy giving gifts to friends. Good luck with Mega.
Good luck with the sea, he gestures to the bay before you, and then turns over to a thrall to like reprimand. or gesture to have one of the mercenary Zealanders reprimand. Many crew look on, Reik, as you cast the runes and give your favourable winds to wherever the seahorse sails next, and that's ordained to be home and Helagaskr. And so it's swiftly there that you all sail. I think now's probably a good place to take an early bio-smoko break. We can get going again in 5 minutes and get back to Helagaskr.
Sounds good.
Righty.
Okay, cool. So yourself and a couple of the men, Ygritte, took out over hard land, leaving Skalaholt and the shore behind you, cutting across a river at a favourable spot and into the vale known as Holga's Vale. Wasn't hard for one of your men to spot fires and talk in the palisaded wood fort, hill fort that surveys the place. And under cover of darkness, you and yours could approach to a favourable enough distance to notice at least that they haven't got hounds or any good ones, and hear the hubbub of their speech, estimating a handful, maybe up to half a dozen of those left in this holdfast that you're given directions to by Ranulf, brother to that to Holger. And from here, you'd know to cut northwest of this vale up into the hills beyond it, finding paths that lead across the streams that gather there into the rocky bluffs where supposedly there's a herd of sheep to be plucked away. Mute Stein would return to the group, and falsely Two Teeth, he waits after hearing the scout's report and looks to you and gives a two-toothed grin. Says, well, what shall it be? Do we go to Holger's fort knocking, or skirt around this place and keep on looking for that herd? He looks between the others and mutes Stein's customary response. And then back to you.
I would not bother with such meager pickings. And even if they're hardly more than sheep herders, a stray axe could do enough damage. 'Tis not worth it. The sheep are where the money's at.
From what the warriors said in Skalaholt, that Magasson who Anthrmnir gave it to, he sacked this place. If there's people up yonder, maybe they're his. Perhaps more reason to give them wide berth, says the scout. Two Teeth closes his lips.
I would not risk further enmity between us and Magasson. We go around.
So you travel a bit further by night before it gets dangerously dark, and there can make a cold camp before setting off at dawn, well skirting wide of the palisaded fort at Holger's Vale, up into the rough foothills and then to the bluffs that look over the place there. You would see the seahorse off in the distance, though you wouldn't know it to be such from your vantage up here. But it passes along up the coast and disappears north as you guys go higher and lose sight of the coast, cutting hinterland, following these paths and ways taught to you that you remembered by rote under Ranulf. Eventually, one of the men, when the weather starts to turn, yells out up ahead, showing a badly torn and not fully consumed sheep carcass, followed by another further up the trail, and then more, and then you come upon a scene of it looks like nearly a dozen ripped to shreds and scattered all over the place, and following on, tracking as this what seems to be this herd that's been hunted and grizzled as it goes. You'd find by the bodies the trail to where the rest are left, huddled in a cornered bluff, where a drop opens one facet and an impassable ridge behind that, and smooth weed-strewn or dying weed-strewn ground of gorse carpeting down towards it. That's kind of barred where a couple of these wolves prowling back and forth. One of them rips a carcass before growling in the direction of you and your men. But as the men pan out around you and flash and flare their weapons, the wolves will just bolt away. The bleeding herd or remnant herd beyond goes silent and is this quivering blob of badly tended fur as it in a frightened mass waits down beyond the stink of ripe corpse, and the wolf rip is strong here.
So is it normal for the wolves to only half eat the carcasses?
In a frenzy like this as they go after them? Perhaps it's more common with foxes, but we certainly don't think that it's that it couldn't just be ascribed to the wolves.
Okay.
It's certainly like a be unnerving, and it's certainly grisly, but not completely unexpected. It looks like the shepherd dogs and sheep were like killed early on, and this herd just kind of fled wildly up into the hills and was tracked the whole way by these prowling wolves. They'll obviously have no contest with you and like run away, leaving their prey. You found 15 of the 20 plus corpses that were like left in their swathe. There's still a score of ill-tended sheep here, like very like woolly and like weed and burr strewn. But Mute Stein shares Two Toth's greedy grin as he looks upon the prize and back to you.
Ygritte is frowning. That so many had been lost before they'd made it up here. Good sheep and good wool are worth good money, but can't be helped. Get some sticks. We'll see if we can drive them down. I suspect we will find a boat waiting for us near the coast.
Mute Stein furrows his brow, but Two Tooth just grins, and he'll call for the others to do as you've asked, and they'll like cut at brambles or gather branches and switches and begin like herding or droving the score of sheep. Well, there's actually 21, but you notice one of them to be wolf bit, and so like kill the thing, leave it behind, maybe stripping it of its coat, but certainly not the meat.
Yeah, if there's any of those corpses that we'd come upon that were not too badly mangled, if they could be basically butchered to save some of the wool, we'd have done
Yeah,
that.
certainly I think some wool could be saved, but no meat, and so that will be carried out as well. It'll take you like a day and a half as like the weather worsens till you get down to the bay. If it was your intent to wait, then there the Seahorse is, just north of Skullerholt's domain, waiting off the coast of Holger's Vale. As you want, like your scout spies it some way down the headland and can lead your sheep train down towards the coast, where the men have moored and are well glad to rest and left to wander in the bay as the weather worsens beyond. Yngvar, I guess you've probably decided it's time to head back north and home and forsake Ygritte to luck, because you don't want to be sailing if the weather's becomes stormy as it looks. And it's kind of around then that the lookouts spy them, and a thin white train spills out of the hinterland scree down towards the beach. Ygritte and 4 well-armed, brutal-looking shepherds corral these bleeding sheep, 20 to a number, towards the bay.
Yeah, I'd get as many people as possible off the ship as quickly as possible so we can do this without getting seen, if we can avoid it.
Yeah, I imagine they were drove to the coast well north of Holger's Vale, and you were waiting on the coast well north of Holger's Vale.
Yeah.
So you know that with quick efficiency and a decent surety that you've not been spied doing it, given the precaution Ygritte took.
Yeah, I think
these
it's like
things,
an almost comical sight of like these hardened Vikings herding sheep down this hillside headed towards a ship. Men who have split skulls and overtaken holdfasts turned into shepherds. And Ygritte more than once has stifled a grin at the absurdity of it.
That was lucky. Found them walking around.
Yes, what do you know? Got the lay of the land, and there happened to be some sheep around.
Odin smiles.
Indeed he does. Pity he didn't smile a little broader. Another score were mauled by wolves.
He'd frown at that. We still have 20 more than we had yesterday.
Indeed. And who knew Mutestein was good at herding sheep?
He's better at, like, says one of them goes to like swear before like Yngvar's eyes wear the man off and back to his talk, carrying a bleeding lamb up into the thigh-high water and onto a boat to be ferried out. Without much trouble, the herd's like brought aboard, much to the discomfort of the crew, though it's less than a day sailing with like the blustering winds that the Guilderman summons north to Helagaskr. You avoid the worst of the weather, which like fizzles and doesn't eventuate into a berating storm as you might have suspected. Just like foul, bruised, dreary weather, which like drops after you kind of berth in at Helagaskr. You'd notice along the approach that a black painted and dragon-proud ship is at the docks that sit at the foot of Helagaskr's like hill and hold fast. The sails are down, and it looks like it's been like not recently arrived, and there are men like at work on the thing, carrying things to and from it. A small assembly of like armed guard and fieldmen like await with Harding as you guys pull up onto the shore, and thralls rush down to like catch ropes and begin hauling the seahorse up onto the shore. You can see like a wide-framed, youngish-looking man with like a healthy mane of black hair flowing in the wind, stand on the docks nearby to the black ship, looking down with like a easy smile as men like work all about him. Those between you and he, like all of you guys, are familiar to you and like the folk of Helagaskr. There doesn't seem to be any great alarm on Harding's face, though certainly a gladness to see you all. And he looks up expectantly as you guys approach after disembarking from the seahorse.
Harding, all is well?
Aye, Captain, Lord, well enough. There's been no trouble here, but for a few thralls that needed sterner beating. No guests but him, and he points, and his.
Who is he?
Guthric, a captain, by way he calls it. Guthric Ygritte, Lord. North from the Bard's Mouth is where he's come. Been serving the flame sword with the other northern lords. Seems easy enough, fellow, he says, like in a tone of someone undecided about someone else.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a chat with him. Before I get comfortable, we need to send people up north to greet Uthal if he comes that way.
I could have men set to it, someone who knows the land perhaps, and Kjartan the young, he's good in the woods, a handy one, a ganger. He could go. Anyone you had in mind, Lord? And he looks like between you assembled and the crew beyond.
Kjartan is good. A couple of others to cover the likely ways of entry. We don't want him to walk into our lands not knowing that they're ours or mine.
And he puts his hands on his hips, like looking over at the man beyond, and then back to you. Well, Lord, if there's nothing else, and he'll like turn to go and see to your matters, I guess, because he assumes that you're going to go off and speak to this stranger, as would be customary, like one lord of the house to another. As you're like walking along the beach towards, there's like friendly seeming strangers. A couple of people move down to like call out and well wish to the Lord of Helagaskr. One man like moves past and like gives a bow towards you, Reik. My lord, law speaker, if we may speak, please, he says. He's a barrel-chested man with meaty hands, thin slits filled with blue eyes, and an Asblother. You mark him as one of those who served Sigorm and now serves your own Lord Yngvar. And he like pleads for your time, Reik, as you're in procession with Yngvar on your way to this stranger's ship. What do you tell the man?
Yeah, Reik will look back over towards the strangers who are awaiting the group of us, and then kind of give a look back towards Yngvar. I may need to stay here as a part of this, but I will be happy to speak with you once I'm free.
Oh, of course. My thanks, Lord, he says. I will wait for you in the town. And he like gives like a nod of the head and like steps back, and like won't harry you further.
Eric will just nod the man off, and like return back to the main group, but we'll make a note of his face and so that he can find him later.
It's not too many strides beyond the pebbled beach. You come into like hearing and good sight of this man and his men. Several of them like stop at your approach and will kind of give like respectful nods towards you guys before moving back to their toil. A grizzled, grey-bearded man steps behind the black-haired youth, I guess you'd call him, though he's like in his mid-20s perhaps or more, but an unmarred face.
Yngvar will
And he would spread his arms wide open and say, "Hail, Lord," and step down off the dock and move towards you. The grey-bearded man will like follow, and those others who look will just go back to their toil.
Yngvar will do the same and like incline his head. Guthric.
I am, and you are Yngvar. Well met, Lord. My men, we came yesterday seeking hospitality. I meant no offence to stay here without your leave, Lord. Your man there, he points up the beach to Harding, says that this would all be well, and we traded friend gifts, and all these men have kept it in their trousers, so to speak, Lord. And he like looks amongst the convict-looking brutalizers beyond, and they seem well kept in order in the same kind of fashion, more or less, as your own crew.
You're more than welcome. This is a welcoming place for all of our people.
Harding, he told me as much. This is the Svartamur, he like points to his ship, and these are crew. We've come south sniffing for lambs, but see that you and yours have had most of them already caught up. You coast reavers have fared better than many of the men who now grave at the Bard's Mouth and Drover's Wash, Lord. My men saw battle there at both places. Now many an oar bench upon Black Worm lays open. I thought to barter here for some of your thralls, given your recent victory, that they might pull an oar on my ship, Lord. We have suits of mail of southern make, and weapons of good craft to trade. And he kind of looks expectantly at you with like that same easy smile, which you imagined probably done him well in the past, given his bright Malin station, and that he's gallingly close of age to yourself, if not a bit younger.
There's a lot that this man says very quickly. And Yngvar is kind of looking at him, and he nods. It's possible. Most of the thralls here are engaged in farm work, and we have a great deal of farmland. Unfortunate, certainly, that you weren't part of these coastal raids. I think most of the land's been snapped up at this stage.
I've heard tell of such things. Though still they say Manavik lays open and ready for pillage. I expect I'll head south from there and find Thormar the Fair. And answer his call to battle and rip off a part of this fat land for myself, as you have done well, Lord. And he like smiles and looks up to your own like land, and you can hear the sound of nails being hammered and wood being sawn and people at toil.
Land and earth not covered in snow. Who'd have thought?
'Tis a beauty, Lord. Your man Harding told me as much about the thralls, Lord, that I'd find hard barter here, but he'd wait for me to speak to you. If that be the case, my men will not eat up more of your food than we have, which is well paid, Lord. We'll make our leave today, if you'd wish, if it would not be rude.
Stay and eat, Guthric. At the least, let's eat together. It's good to know those around you. These are going to be our lands soon, and the more of us that are acquainted, the less pointless violence there is.
Oh, and the better for all of us and our skin, he says, adopting the easy smile again, and continues to say, the Coldbrander decreed that we should all live at peace, and that nothing on the west coast of Asboth be raided this year. Can you imagine it? 100 years and no reaving through the winter up this coast. But he's ordered it, and so we will all comply. Like you say, it is good to foster friendship in autumn, if we'll not be able to fight in winter.
Well, not here in Asbloth, I suppose. There are greener lands even south.
And he's put a mark on those, Lord, at least for now. They say he's at peace with that mere Lord, and he like points off vaguely west. And that he's ordered not to touch anything south of here down to the tip. He means like the gates to the inner sea.
Yngvar would kind of frown at that. That seems like unlike Uthal.
I know. I thought the same, friend, he hazards, seeing like your facial reaction. But those are his words. I heard it from a man I don't doubt, who heard it from the Lord himself.
Perhaps he doesn't sow flames anymore, but seeds. A place like this could change a man's mind, I think.
Make a man soft. Make a man fat and happy, he says with a smile, but you wonder like how true the smile and the sentiment is.
Then let's go eat to fat and happiness.
Indeed, Lord. And he'll give like a whistle through his teeth, which is well practiced, and get some of the men to like stop at their work or like to move with him as he'll go with, to foster friendship with you and eat from your larder. And to talk of like mercantile things that make you wish for Ranulf. Of that, if you won't trade in thralls, will you trade like food from the plenty or bounty you have in exchange for his war coats and armaments and other like boring stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, Yngvar's not like a merchant. He doesn't really have a good head for it, and he thinks we probably like, and he doesn't even know, but he would think like we probably need all that food to feed all these people.
Yeah, that's what Harding would say in like consultation with you later, that it looks like winter's stocks will be worn thin by the end, and if it's a long winter, then certainly there'll be like starvation or something that will have to be done. He'll also catch you up and say that construction's been underway on like hafts for axes and spears, and trees have been felled in the Bard Skoga for the rebuilding of Bua. A field of 12 boys has been mustered, and the other fishermen have had decent catches, though complain more incessantly each week of like the constantly befouling weather and how it's getting worse now on the verge of winter.
I think that the coin crow, we could sort out trade between him and this guy maybe, because he's coming here soon.
Yeah, if you indulge him to stay, then you can charge a lord's tithe on their transaction and gain 10% of their.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so he would say that much then, I suppose. After like Ygritte mentions it to him, there's a Zaylander coming. You might know him, the Coin Crow. He's always got supplies, always has thralls. He'll be coming here soon if you want to stay until then.
If I have your leave, Lord, I'd be welcome to it. The men are sore from rowing, and it's been harder with not so many men. And he clutches his Thor amulet.
Yeah, he sort of nods slowly to himself.
Yeah, this is the example of like of a jarl or a captain, someone like Ulvaig, who instead of going off reaving, had gone off to join the army and follow Uthal south against Golden Fleece. And look what he has, like half a crew and wealth enough, I guess, though nothing more to show for it than like a need for thralls or men to row.
Yep, that was the real fear that Yngvar had, is that if we didn't get land quickly, that we would end up like that as well. Yeah, and it's like not lost on him, the sort of mirror image of it.
And so at your expense, you feast him another day until Carol Coincrow comes before evening of that day. And can like introduce those guys, and they can conduct their affairs and pay you accordingly for it. In the meantime, before that, Reik, after you like seen to at the feast, you can go catch up with that man who'd hassled you earlier if you wish. Oh, yep, I see you wrote that in the chat just there. Yeah. Oh, my thanks that you came, Lord Speaker. My lord, please come in, he'll say, and gesture for you to go into his hovel's probably is too unkind a word. It's dry enough, and there's something decent on the pot, and the thralls are respectful enough to bow as you like walk in. You can see like a coat of mail and helmet slung on like a mock like wooden mannequin, shield slung on the wall beyond, and the man like rubs his hands together nervously.
Tell me, what is your name?
My name, Lord, is Helfred, and I served Sigorm before I swore to Lord Yngvar. Lord. My trouble is this. One of the Huskals, Black Ragnar, the men call him. He has my young cousin, a woman, enthralled, begotten honestly, he admits, in the sack of Helagaskr. Now I've offered this man fair price, and even unfair price to myself for release of the girl, that I could free her as is befitting. I'm a free Huskar, you see, of Lord Yngvar, and it's not right that she should live in servitude like this. I've offered him silver, Lord, silver beyond the worth of any thrall here, he says, like with near certainty, and he will not see reason, this Black Ragnar. I beg you, Lord, it's an affront to me. Surely the law must support me in this. Certainly it is just like guile or spite by which the man will deny me this price. 90 hack silver for a woman, Lord, he says, exasperated.
Yeah, Reik will kind of take a moment to puzzle through the scenario in his mind. It's by all law, the thrall is his property. He can do with it as he wishes, to sell it at whatever price he wishes, or not sell it. Your desire for it does not give you any right to it by law.
But surely, my lord, if you or Lord Yngvar were to speak to him, he might see sense then and take this bandit's price, Lord. Perhaps I could pay yourself or the Lord for their much prized counsel, he says, like his eyes not being able to find yours all of a sudden.
Still, it is as his right to do with how he decides, yet if some peaceable approach can be made within the people of this place, and I see it all the better, we can find ways to understand, get along. I'll speak to Yngvar and see if he sees fit to question this man as to why he will refuse to sell this thrall even at such a high price. Yet he must understand that if it is not within his need to solve this problem, then there is little recourse that you might have from this man, as long as he possesses the thrall by his own right, which you admit to yourself. There is little course that you can take outside of negotiation and speech. I will see if the Lord wishes to hear this.
My thanks, Lord, he says, smiling, like clasping his hands together and stopping the incessant ringing of them finally. My thanks, and he looks around. Can I offer you drink? Food, Lord?
Eric will just nod, happy to accept some small hospitality for his counsel.
So while your brother's drinking or carousing with the guest, Ygritte, when you like peel off to go back to your chambers or like see to something, it's then that Vigdis would approach you. You don't recognize her at first as her hair's been like shorn a bit shorter, and she's adopted like the light cuirass of like leather of like one of the Fyrd, and has like a man's dagger like belted or like put into the loop on a belt. And she'll like go towards you, clearing her throat, giving like an uneasy look either way. Ygritte, Balder's daughter, I was told to come find you by Wildglist. And she gives like a hard look about it, as if like she didn't particularly want to be ordered that way.
Who are you?
I'm Vigdis, Kenneth's daughter. Not that matters, she means about her last name. The Lord, he ordered that I serve you.
The thrall.
I
You
killed a
murdered
man,
the man.
a
Yes.
free woman. I killed him because he tried to touch me, and she shows her teeth. And then she like remembers herself and like what clemency she still breathes and adopts a half respectful posture and demeanor.
Good. You have spirit and fight, but you're smart enough to know when to shut up. That's a good start.
She eyes you icily at that, but can't fault you with any rebuke. She says, I'm to serve you, but I don't know how to call an Isclofen woman a lady. Do not want for skills and know the joints of beasts and how to keep a hall and what songs belong to what birds, but I won't empty your night soil.
Ygritte, her eyebrows go up at the audacity of this woman. Let me be perfectly clear. You would do anything I told you to, if you are to serve me. That is not negotiable. However, I have more use for you than emptying pots.
Well, what would you have of me? Do you wish me to go and she like points over to like where the men are feasting? Feast and drink? And she gives you like an audacious grin.
Go and sit. Listen. I will come find you, and I will ask what you have heard. We will see how good your ears are, and how much attention you are paying. Go.
She'll pick up her feet and like move off, and a couple of the drunk crewmen of the Black Worm will eye her and like call out as she like takes her place and begins to listen.
Ygritte will take up a place, not in the midst of it, but close enough to keep an eye. She doesn't want this woman starting trouble. She clearly has a temper, and drunken men are not known for their best behavior.
Yeah, she'll come to find you with. Oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah, no, just after perhaps an hour, Ygritte will catch the woman's eye and motion for them to walk away from the revelry. Tell me, Vigdis, what did you hear?
Well, I know that Blackworm's men, Guthric Mirkid, or Dark One as they call him, or Dour One, is even-handed and rewards well his men. His nickname is not well earned, but given in mirth. And that they talk of fighting still east along the Bard's Mouth under the Flame Sower, and to be glad to be shy of it, as there's scant halls or castles for any to tear free for themselves that way now. And some other thing about lengths of their cocks and other shite that men talk about, you'll understand.
Yes. Those are the not important things, but...
Then they mostly spoke of unimportant things, lady. She says ladylike, not in the proper way.
They often do. But you did well to hear the important things. Knowing if a man is fair and how his crew treat him is useful. What they think of him can be turned to favor.
Well, it's clear enough of this Guthric that the men want to be his friend and fear to be his enemy.
Good. That is enough for now. Tomorrow, we will begin with something different. Make sure you have your blade upon you.
She nods like once in a manner that tells you, of course. And she'll go off to do that. The next morning, after you've completed whatever morning ritual you might have, Anthrmnir, Hanahachuk will find you and see to your wounds as she's been ordered, and almost cloyingly so. Ranulf is seeing to your household and ordering your thralls and doing much of what he would do when he was your thrall, almost in not a desperate way, but in a way of a man who feels heavily in debt or owing of you. He tries to do everything and make every comfort and does not harass you or let anyone speak with you if it looks like that would be suitable. And, the wounds hurt more now than they did when they were given, or the day after that, or when you were rowing. It's now that you've stopped that there's pain.
Yeah, as the wounds are being tended to, and there's that tender touch that brings a grimace across his face, and maybe meets eyes with Ranulf at that point, because I'm sure Ranulf has seen most of Anthrmnir. I was going to say most of his moods, most of his mood at this point, and there might be a quizzical look on Ranulf's face, which causes some thought in Anthrmnir's. And he'll look back at this wound, prodding at it, feeling the tenderness, and seeing the kind of angry redness that surrounds it.
This bad, says Hanahachuk. Poison, Lord, she says the word weirdly, and not in the same inflection of subservience that it's meant to. As if it's a name.
You'll continue
Fester, she says, and then puts her fingers together and says a word that sounds like a sound to you.
Yeah, his brows will crease at that, and he'll continue to prod at it, feeling the tenderness. He's seen men.
Yeah, the
die
tenderness
from,
is fiery and it's swollen to the touch.
yeah, he's seen men die from these kind of festering wounds. Ranulf.
Yes, Anthrmnir. He'll put down what he was doing, some broom that he was needlessly sweeping something with, and rush over. Lord?
Fetch Reik for me.
I will at once, and he'll not run, but certainly rush off to do just that. You've just sent the man with impotence on his way, Reik, wearied now of his haranguings, when Ranulf the learned rushes up to you, takes off his hat, and with an earnest expression says, "My lord bid me come to you, get law speaker. He's well wounded from his holmgang, and I think it's turned to putrescence."
Yeah, Rake's look of frustration at the man sent away before him will turn to one of concern. His brow will furrow, and his eyes will narrow, and he'll give a nod. Take me to him.
I fear it must be grievous, lord, else he would not speak of it. I will, and he'll lead the way, which I'm sure you probably know the way to Anthrmnir's hold, that he has now lords as Carl over the thralls in there, but if not, this man can lead you there past where a dozen boys are training under Little and Big Tor, while smiling Torvald smiles and watches on as Vigdis and Ygritte go at it with blades and make your way into the hold. And you can smell the wound when you come in, mingling with, but rising above, the other smells of men, women, children, and animals in here. And a curly-haired youth with well-tanned skin steps aside, watching equal looks, curiosity, and fear as you like rattle past towards where up on a table Anthrmnir is set, stripped from the waist down, a sheen of sweat over his skin, and the Scrael woman tuttering over him and tisking in her strange speech. And she looks up and steps away, eyes downcast as you approach. And yeah, the concern
Reik.
was warranted. You can see. Sorry, you go.
No. Yeah, Reik will like see the severity of the wound, and he'll like look up towards Anthrmnir. He'll just like shake his head. You should have called sooner. It's not good.
Wasn't bothering me before. That is now.
Yeah, Reik will without even bothering to like stop or ask permission, will like kneel down next to Anthrmnir and begin like poking around and looking at the wounds to see what he can decipher as to their severity and whether or not they're infected.
Can I get a wound wise, please?
Yes, sir. That is 17.
Yeah, so you identify that a rot has set in, and that these symptoms are showing something that's certainly been in this wound for days prior, maybe even before you set off rowing, likely from a dirty weapon in the holmgang. It will exhaust him further as the fever rises over the course of the days to come, and it can certainly kill people, though is more like more a certain thing in youths or young people and the elderly. One of his age usually would be fine against it if it were not for the many other wounds that he bears across his body. Mechanically speaking, you're going to lose a level of exhaustion after each long rest checks, unless you can succeed at a DC 11 grit, saving throw.
I'll just write that down.
Yep. When you save, you go back a level, or like get the level of exhaustion expunged from the long rest, and when it goes to 0, it will disappear. So you currently have 1 level of exhaustion from it, and 1 level of exhaustion from the holmgang. So at the end of a week, like a long rest, you'll have to make DC 11 con save. If you fail that, you'll go to 3 levels of exhaustion. If you save, you'll go to 1 level of exhaustion, and so on as the weeks come.
Yeah, Reik will continue to look over and just like shake his head. I think I might be able to tend to this, but it will be a lengthy and quite painful process. Do you have any business through the night or through the next days to come that you must attend to? Or could you spare yourself?
Unless I'm called for, nothing's pressing.
Reik will look over towards one of the other thralls, whoever was the closest and least occupied with tending to anything important. Send word to Yngvar. I'll need to block out the next many hours to tend to Anthrmnir's wound. I believe I might be able to stop the rot from consuming him, but it will take a long time. I presume at least 8 hours.
I'll go and tell him, Lord, and he'll rush off to do it, the young thrall. Ahanachuk will look to you with like concern on her face. Not cut? And she looks questioningly at the wound and then back to you, obviously not sharing your optimistic diagnosis.
Yeah, Reik will shake his head. I will help him. It will take some time.
Yeah, Ranulph will come and move her away and take to like boiling of stuff and preparing the bone needles and cut thread and such for like the grisly work that you'll set to and the pain you'll inflict upon Anthrmnir as you begin his convalescence.
So I have a rune ability here. Basically, the Kenaz rune that I know as part of my studies. I can take up to 8 hours tending to a diseased or otherwise sick person, burning the disease from them, which will hopefully cure him of the affliction. But Reik
That's
is going to
awesome.
set that process, a very painful process of like drawing all these specific runes on Anthrmnir's body and like using like actual torches and fire to like burn at the rot, to basically use the runic fire to quite literally burn away the affliction, and it will be a long, exceptionally painful process, but ultimately we'll end up with a cure.
Yeah, I imagine like a few people watching on from the building as night falls with like the flames and like the shrieks inside as you set to the grim work. But the next morning, true your foresight, the man does much better. The fever is broken, and the wounds do not fester any further. And it was a grisly agony, the such that caught you to lose consciousness twice, Anthrmnir. But by the morning, you're certainly well for it and will not lose the leg.
My apologies for such a terrible suffering that you had to endure. You should survive. You'll still be able to fight. And he'll like at this point be drawing like a final rune, a Naudis rune, determination, said to stop dying creatures and give them life, which he'll like inscribe just above where the wound on the leg is now like burned and cauterized, the infection burned from it.
The suffering would be worse if you had not done it. He'll lean over to the bucket beside him, take out some fresh water and the rag that was dipped in it, and wipe the sweat from his forehead before more beads appear as his broken fever continues to make him sweat more.
I'd advise you rest while you can, though I suspect that that advice may not be well heeded from someone such as you, but I will give it nonetheless.
I just elicits one of Anthrmnir's grunts as he nods his head in appreciation for what you've done for him, before he kind of starts to look down and poke at the wounds slightly, feeling it's still tender before lying back.
Drake will like stand and look to the other people. Continue to tend for him. He will be fine, but he still has some time before he'll fully recover. See that his needs are met, and if his condition worsens, send someone for me, and I will come and return to see him.
We will. I will, Lord, says Ranulph. And he nods and makes the other thralls nod as well.
And then, unless there's any other business, Rake would go and leave and go to find Yngvar.
Yeah, the next day, Vigdis will find you with a couple of armed men in the morning. Though instead of for training Ygritte, she'll say, the Lord wants us to go north and take supplies and relieve those scouts into Kjartan the Younger he sent. That's right. Nursemaid work, thrall work, she says. But it will get us out of this pigsty, and she looks about at some of like the hovels on like the poorer side of Helagaskr.
You are too
And
free with your
mute
tongue.
Mute Stein nods behind. She shrugs. I've heard that.
If you are not more careful, you might lose possession of it.
The spitter told me that.
He wasn't wrong. It's still a possibility.
I saddled your horse and washed it, and I've packed fodder in the saddlebags, she says, deflecting the eye with feigned compliance or subservience.
Good. And perhaps in this thrall work, you might even meet the great Jarl Uthal.
Oh, I wonder if I will not faint from it, she says, and faints like a faint, putting her hand up over her head and slumps into her saddle before swinging her leg over it and mounting up.
Careful, Victus. You can still work mute.
She looks to Mute Stein at that, who just looks scary, and she shuts up for most of that day as you guys head off. Kjartan the Younger has nothing to report, nor his men that they're happy for what supplies that you bring, and one man who's caught a chill will be happy for the horse to take back. The rest are happy enough to stay on. They say that they've seen nothing of alarm and no heralds of the flame sower, though they have spotted while foraging men moving on the northern side of the river. They have not gone beyond the borders of their lord, and as few number cannot range far from the road, or path, I should say. It's probably that afternoon as you're settling in and finish erecting your own tents and goods and have your horses tethered, and men probably settling, preparing to break their fast, that Kjartan returns with one of his men, a spring in his step, but not one of excitement. And his tone is lowered in that way that he does when he's speaking about something sensitive, even though there's people many and well within hearing. A curious thing I've seen, Ygritte, he says. Beyond, while we were ranging up the eastern banks, I saw men had fjorded across the river. They were cutting at trees. They were building something, and there were armed men amongst them. They did not see us, he gestures to the other man. We watched them a time. They do not have the look of broken men or brigands. Northmen, if I'm not mistaken. And the crow on his shoulder's like, ah!
How many?
14, he says.
Is that our side that they were on? Our side of the river?
Why, the southern side of the river. Bard's River.
Perhaps we should go and greet these guests who have come into Yngvar Blackhand's realm.
I could take you back there. It'd be close to darkness, though. And then he thinks, not unkind an hour. That approaching a camp at night's liable to get you killed. But Kjartan knows the woods well, and if he says you could reach it before nightfall, then that's pretty sure enough.
Do it.
So a few are left here under Two Teeth. Mute Stein, Vigdis will follow you, and Kjartan will lead on through the trail he'd traipsed to a small clearing that looks down upon where rings of older trees nearby to the river have been felled down. You can still see a couple that haven't been chopped or hauled away. And beyond them, workers stopped now, sound of it there. You can see side of it, this wooden quadrupodal, or whatever the word is, four beams holding up the bottom of it. They've been placed into mud and prepared holes. The workings or beginnings of a watchtower on the southern side of the Drover's Wash, where some stones and rapids halt the river enough that people can cross when the river's not in flood. Where a great battle was. Kjartan hisses, sucking on his teeth as he does. They say hundreds died here. You wouldn't know it from the shadows spreading, and he'll point to dusk approaching. Do we go down?
Yes, I want this resolved.
He'll lead you down, his hands well clear of his weapons and moving, and he'll even like sing out after a time so that one of the men who was like on watch but looking back hungrily at the campfire can notice him and call the others to alarm. And men's in various states of armament or even undress, so those have been like bathing in the river in preparation for their dinner, will like move forward and quickly go for weapons, though not hold them threateningly. A taller man who in like the twilight appears younger than his like size and height by the look of his face, which is marred by a mark down the right hand side over his eye and down towards the corner of his lip. He's got close cropped hair and eyes that look too small in his big head. He says, "I am Horde, son of Rock. I speak for these men in this camp. Who are you beyond who goes armed?" And Kjartan, with his arms outstretched and an easy smile on his face, looks to you, Ygritte, as the others do by deference.
Hail and well met. I'm Ygritte, and I bring you welcome. You've crossed into the lands of Yngvar Blackhand.
He looks around. "I've not heard of him." And he looks wary, maybe you think by his reaction, taking you as an outlaw, which you don't appear to be, but actually secretly are.
Yeah, with the way her cloak's arranged and in the dusk, it would be impossible to tell, but his gut instinct isn't wrong.
He says, also you go.
Oh, go ahead.
He says, "I serve Jarl Ragnvalf, called Ormsaug, north of here. He's Lord of Bard's Mouth now, by decree of Lord Uthul. These men and I have his oath and bondage. He ordered us come here, to go across the fjord and build this tower, and so we have. Your lord, Asblotha or Isclofin?"
Isclofin, of course. As you can see, so are we.
"Did he fight here?" He like gestures to like the dark, murky, soon to be nighttime waters of the Drover's Wash.
Nay, we were not here. We took Helagaskr. And
I
with
know
it,
of the place. Sorry, and all of the what?
And with it, this part of the land.
He furrows his brow at that. "I cannot speak for or against that. It is not my place. I was told to come here, to build and protect, and so I will build and protect," he says the last bit with like a tiny little bit of like a malleted hammer.
Certainly you are welcome to protect your Jarl's realm. However, it is we who protect Yngvar's. And by crossing the river, you have entered that.
"There's no marker or waystone." He almost goes to say lady, but then doesn't. Not quite trusting his instinct that you're an outlaw, not quite trusting his instinct that you're like of nobility. Because you kind of have one foot in each grave.
Certainly, we have not yet had time to make a mark at every possible entry point into this land. However, you see us here to welcome you and to inform you of the border.
"My thanks, but these words are best for my master, and perhaps your own. I'll take them as you wish when we send back, but I'll not stop my work at the word of another. You'll understand why, of course," he says with like a bit more cordiality or like respect than you'd expect of an Isclofin warrior like this, which would tell you that he believes that you truly do serve Jarl Yngvar, whoever that is, or else he'd just come and thrall you or kill you or something.
And you will understand that my brother would not suffer such a tower to be built upon his land. Nor can I. So we are at an impasse.
"My lord says this is his ground to build in and his trees to take if he wills, by the blood of himself and his men, and my brothers. If it must come to fighting for it, the gods will decide," he says, like not in like not with malice, but more with like certainty.
Certainly the gods can decide if the lords cannot agree. However, would it not be simple to have my lord and yours simply meet and discuss the exact location of the border.
My lord's hall is warm enough, and he observes the old ways of custom and hospitality. Since he is the greater man, and known where yours is not, I'm sure he'll happily receive your brother Jarl.
And I am certain that my brother would accept such hospitality. However, we are also expecting Jarl Uthel to come this way, and I am not certain if Blackhand can leave his hall at such a time.
He shrugs at that and looks east along the river. I do not think the flame soul will be going south before the snows. He headed east to Golnjafjord, the last thane of Golden Fleece. Can you imagine it? What a fool. They'll all see his ribs before the first snows, or mark my words. Either way, he's not coming south. He went east.
I thank you for that information. It was unknown to me. I will take it back to Yngvar or send a men with it. However, I
You and
must
your
ask
men.
that you cease building until the feud has been settled.
I would rather risk your ire, lady, he says weirdly, or your brothers, than my own lord's. You'll forgive me, as you say, we are at an impasse. Come, these words and things that I speak, they are not my own. They are my lord's, and I'll observe them above all, but your men are welcome to share our pot.
Thank you. Yes.
I
We
don't
will join
like
you.
it, says Kvarten, but then stops when you say that.
Yeah, like shoots Curtin a look, understanding that there's such a delicate balance between the shit talk and the playing nice with your neighbors. Um,
Yeah, Horde will have one of the men move aside so that you and Kjartan and the others can like sit down, and he'll put like a healthy spoon into like bowls for you guys and like a double serve for Mute Stein. As you can sit in amongst the flickering fire, opposite the other cruel-looking bastards here.
how many days is your Jarl?
Less than a day's march up that way. Quicker if by horse. We're not so lucky, as you'll see. Or wouldn't mind horse, says one of the men from behind him, picking something out of his teeth. A march to that stone castle they call Bard's Mouth. Confusing, if you ask me, to name a castle after a river and them in the same place. Who can know with these southerners? And he like spits over his shoulder.
Yeah, Ygritte actually lets out a laugh. Yeah, they don't have the same head for such things. The Thanes who hold out against Uthel Flamesower. And their names. What ridiculous names.
Yaldwalds and Gyurds, he says. Ha! And then like will take like another like slop of the shitty stew into his mouth.
Yeah, Ygritte is almost strangely at home with these rough characters. Just utterly unintimidated by them. And will not unhappily eat this nasty stew.
You say you and your men, you weren't at the battle. You missed a fine thing.
So we did. But we've been raiding along the coast and have much to show for it, including Helagaskr.
If it should come that you go before my lord, don't speak pridefully of things like that. He despises those who did not fight in the Flamesowers' battles. Those latecomers, he calls them, naysayers. Keep those things to yourself.
Your wisdom is appreciated. I will pass such message along to my brother. Although A Jarl
Might I
will do
pass
as he
something?
wishes.
Might I pass something on for my own shine of friendship?
Certainly. Your Jarl... Yngvar is a fair man. He will not try to cheat, not try to swindle. He wishes a fair deal.
So too does my lord, and in the firelight and the smiles, you both know each other's lying, and both go to eat at your stew at the same time.
Yeah. But Yngvar was a reaver before he became Jarl of such a place. That is where his years have been spent.
Have not we all?
Yes, of course. And she's like suddenly thinking that she had not spent as much time doing that. And no, of course they've all been reaving. Yes, it is.
Oh, nice, yeah.
It is the Skloffen way. Although I hear that there is to be no raiding upon the coast this winter.
Then you've heard true. I've heard my lord saying as much, and he heard it from the flame sower. Can you imagine it?
The whole western coast and not a ship in sight. Huh.
How many fat southerners will think that the gods have heard them? In Sjördeford they'll mock us. What do warriors know, eh? And he gives you a jostle of the shoulder, in that goofy dude hit on kind of way. And can I get you to make a dex save, please? DC 15.
Oh gosh. How hard did he hit me? Yeah, I think Ygritte is grinning, actually. She's just enjoying this. Fail. Just barely. 14.
Like the scarf that you've stitched into the top of your cloak, falls sidelong with the gesture, and he sees the tip of the brand, and his goofy smile goes to a hard look, and his flirtation stops and is swallowed up by the crackle of the fire. But he
Ygritte,
doesn't make a sign of it, and he doesn't speak of it to any of the men around the fire who from a quick worried glance from yourself as you pull it back up, don't seem to have noticed either.
yeah, Ygritte, I rolled an insight, and she rolled a 19 or 20 on that.
To see who knew or who might have reacted to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, then just him. I think Kjartan's too busy watching the others for signs of treachery, and Mute Stein's too busy eating because he's hungry all the time.
And she'll meet his eyes and kind of hold her hands out in that universal symbol of I don't mean any harm, and just give the smallest head shake, and then continue on like nothing's happened.
You and your men can share our camp this night if you wish. But he says it in a cold way, not in the warm tone that he'd previously had. The words are welcoming, but the tone is not.
Kjartan, could we return to our own camp in the dark, or would it
Of
be best
course,
to
I
stay
know
here?
I can lead the way, he says, but it's with the haste of someone who wants to be gone from this place.
Yeah.
But he's the best woodsman on the Seahorse.
Yeah. Your hospitality is appreciated. However, we have our own camp to return to, and my own men to see to.
May Odin and Tyr guide your step, then, he says, rather than saying Odin and Tor.
She's wishing she could just have a moment with him and try and explain, but just knows it's not possible. And yours as well. Perhaps I will see you in your lord's hall in some days hence.
I hope so, he says, but it's in the cordiality that you're meant to speak to the relative of a Thane or Jarl, not with the individual kindliness of one man to a woman. And a couple of his men are knowing of this like subtext, like look up from their bowls and like give waves, and a few of them are even genuine smiles to your men or companions, rather than like the distrust that Kjartan obviously shows. And the dark drinks you up, and it's a silent walk back to your camp. By mid-afternoon the next day, Reik, Anthrmnir, and Yngvar, you guys are watching the Fjord being schooled by the Asclophan warriors while the Asblotha warriors are training. And Coincrow comes up to you and pays his tithe, another 310 hack silver for your coffers, for the deals that you helped broker between he and Guthric of the Black Worm, who's now sailed off into the Hjorvalda Bay, intending to head south, as he'd told you. And Carol comes to pay his coin, and as is due, and thanks you well, and tells you that he intends now, with your blessing, to sail on north to trade up the coast. A fine thing you've done here, Blackhand. I'll be sure to come back and mark your progress come spring, though I doubt I'll stop in thereafter. Oh, as always, the gods will decide that, he'll say with a clink as he hands the bag over.
Yeah, he smiles and says Helagaskr is a place for merchants and trade and money, and he kind of like waves his hand as if he doesn't really.
And law, he says, pointing to the law speaker, that is always prized by merchants such as myself.
Law indeed. We need more of that around here in these lands, I think.
I'll not hold you longer, Lord. I wanted to pay you in person as a sign of respect. Like, it wouldn't be proper if he'd sent someone to pay you. It would be, like, weird. Or maybe you wouldn't think of that, but he did.
Yeah. Yngvar appreciates the gesture anyway, and he would nod his head.
You hear, like, a youth cry out and move away with, like, a bleeding head from one of, like, the Asclophan warriors who's laughing. It's then that you notice, like, the movement of Jorah rushing up from, like, the ditch down below. Lord! Riders! And he like point out and draw your attention on past like the construction out to where three figures are cantering along down the path south. At this distance, you recognize them as Ygritte and her company.
By their pace, does it look like they're hurrying?
I guess, Taylor, you would have ridden back to tell your brother this, but not at like a breakneck speed.
Yeah, and like
So probably like fast, but not ridiculously fast.
Yeah, you know Ygritte and the like her mood and her set in the saddle, and you can tell she has something on her mind and there's news, but it's not like they're hurtling at breakneck speed kind of news.
Okay. Then he'll take like a few more minutes to like give proper goodbyes to Guthric and to Coincrow, and like just do more schmoozing, more sort of, yes, isn't the law wonderful, and this is a place of peace and of all the rest.
Sudska drivelry.
Yes. Yep. He's trying to sell Helagaskr as like a lawful place where you can come and sell your stuff. And he's trying to give that impression as much as possible. And so even when riders are coming, he'll kind of say to Jorah, like, all right. Yeah, I'll be there in a moment. And then he'll like spend some time sort of schmoozing a little bit before eventually like bidding them goodbye and making his way down.
Warriors or thralls will come to take your horses from you, Ygritte, and you can see the Thane and his company stepping down like through the town towards you.
Yeah, she'll leave the horse and move with some haste to greet Yngvar. We must speak.
He'll nod and like look around at who's here. And if it's people that he trusts, he'll just say, speak.
The Bard's Mouth, the river. I was under the impression that your land goes all the way to it.
Does.
Indeed. It seems that Ormsaug is Jarl in the north of here.
Ormsaug.
Aye. of a holdfast called Bard's Mouth, as Blothers. Oh, is it? On which side, Nico? The north or the south?
South side. The South Bald Skolga is the borders of your Thaindom, but they border the river, which borders the northern Bard Skoga. So it's a tricky, ambiguous area.
Ormsaug, from his holdfast of Bard's Mouth, had instructed a watchtower to be built on the southern bank.
The southern bank. Our bank.
Aye.
The gods piss.
Yeah, you know of this Reaver of when your sister speaks of him. You know of his legend.
Yeah, he's famous. He's one of Uthel's like biggest boys, isn't he? Yeah, I guess he like pinches the bridge of his nose and like tries to think about what to do about this. Like, can't just go around telling someone like Ormsaug what to do, especially when the boundary is like not super clear. And he'll think, oh, we'll have to go speak with him.
Aye. I spoke to Hord, son of Rock, one of Ormsaug's men. They were building the tower, and were, understandably, more willing to risk your wrath than the wrath of their lord.
Yeah, you don't know of Horde, son of Frock, Yngvar, but you know of Frock, son of Frock. He died under the expedition with Ormsug when they went north for the needful things that the Skag could save the burnt Uthal Flamesoul's life. So the legend goes. Frock met his death there against some scrale monster or the like. So if the sun is anyway cast in his mould, maybe a youth of note.
Yeah, I mean, Ormsaug has like literally gone on sagas, and there are like stories told about him in that sort of way. And so like Yngvar wants to be really careful not to like insult this man or to. But he also knows that if you give an inch, then someone like Ormsaug will take 7 miles. You know.
They call him Ormsaug for a reason.
Yeah. But he would say we have to speak with him.
Hord, son of Rock, offered his lord's hospitality and invitation to speak to Ormsaug at the Bard's Mouth.
We'll have to.
I likewise suggested that you would accept such hospitality, and to expect us some days hence.
I don't know if it's wise to bring you.
Of course.
I would want you there, but someone like Ormsaug, they take this, and he'll like put his hand to her neck very seriously.
Yeah, she like looks away, not meeting your eyes.
So seriously that even though you are my sister, I don't know if I could stop them.
I would be careful.
It's dangerous. I think it's dangerous no matter what.
Bargaining with a man like him will be no easy feat. If you come too aggressively, we'll stomp you out. And few people will come to your aid, yet if you submit, then you give away everything to him anyways. This will not be an easy line to walk. I do not envy you for having to walk it. And I will help where I can.
Ygritte like looks at you like, you damn well better.
It's a tricky situation. I don't know what the answer is. We'll have to speak with him and see if we can set a firm boundary and place stones so that there is no more crossing, accidental or otherwise. And if they're building a tower, we have to build a tower.
No one likes building towers.
Least of all, we don't want them building towers with our wood without paying for it. Hmm.
They
Well-
said
Yes.
Uthal has gone east. At least I did learn that.
Ah, so he won't come south.
No. They said he is well, there is one Thane of Golden Fleece left. And you can imagine how that will end.
Hmm. I would go east. Yeah, that would make sense. You can see that he's like surprisingly stressed out by the idea that Ormsaug is his neighbor. Like there are hundreds of like blockheaded savages who could have been his neighbor, but it has to be like this guy with reputation and saga about him, and so he like is trying to process now what he can do to like appease without like just bending over a barrel, and it's a lot to figure out.
If we could somehow, Reik will like shake his head, nearly laughing more out of frustration than out of any comedy. We could somehow form a proper relationship and allyship with him, though. He would be stronger ally than anyone that we know. He's a powerful person, though I do not know how we get him on our side without first giving up much to him. If there is a way that will not break us, perhaps it might be worth it. But again, we cannot give up too much, or he will take twice as much as we offer.
Ygritte like rolls her eyes at the circular speak of the lawgiver. And she looks back to Yngvar. You know, it's a real pity you don't have some pretty sister to marry off to him and make peace, hmm?
Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, all you've got is me. And I look just like you.
So you're very pretty.
You're very ugly.
I had plans. We were going to go back and take that castle, but now this takes precedence. We have to stop this before it becomes an issue.
The castle full of dead things will still be there later.
Yeah, but someone else might have taken it.
No one else is stupid enough to take it.
Everyone else is desperate enough. There's no land left here. Guthric might go. He's desperate.
Guthric would die. I
Maybe.
don't care if his men like him.
Ridding a place of a curse and of the dead is no easy feat, regardless of desperation. As she says, it would be a fool's errand for most. I think it is better left for another time. The dead will be more patient than Ornsog will.
True. We should go immediately then.
I think so.
I might go with you.
What if they see it?
It is an open secret already. Anyone who knows you have an outlaw sister.
You're right. We shouldn't hide things. Yes, let's go.
Though perhaps it might be prudent to hide it at least at first. I would rather not be killed on sight.
Yeah, he'll nod and like reach up and like move the scarf and like move it like to the side again, like have a quick look at how visible it is. The bigger scarf.
Fine.
So this is probably the first time ever that 3 captains have left Helagaskr in one day, but so it is. And you guys set off on a horseback north into the Bardskoga, north through it by ways known to Kjartan until you reach the Drover's Wash and come through like the cleared woods amongst the field of stumps to where Horde Son of Rock still is with his men working, and they've cut down surprisingly more trees since you'd been there, Ygritte, and the tower looks some ways finished. 4 great oak poles that are like topped with platforms of ash and reinforced in on 3 sides with a ladder leading up to the back to give it some 15-20 foot of survey so far to the woods beyond. And the ground rises up into the thick hilly haircut of the Bardskoga beyond. Recedes as you guys come into view, and they'll call out to you and descend down from the thing. Men with adzes, axes, and saws will like put them down in sign of friendship as your armed host approaches yourself and Anthrmnir, Reik, Ygritte, and whoever else you'd named, up to 8, unless you had wanted to have people come with you, not horsed as well.
I want to bring 9 ideally if we have 9 horses so that we can be in a sort of lucky number. If we don't have 9, I guess.
Sure. It'll be 8 riding horses and like a nag or like a draft horse then.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could.
9 is a lucky number and a holy number, so I'd take that many.
Okay. You and 5 warriors?
Yeah.
You guys and 5 warriors, I mean. Yep.
Yep. I'll bring like Jura and a couple of the other like known hard lads.
Mute Stein because he can't say anything stupid.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the perfect one to be doing dodgy shit with Ygritte.
Exactly.
Can never like talk about it. Yeah, Horde Son of Rock will recognize you, Ygritte, though defer to what is obviously like the Thane by like your arm rings and weaponry and chainmail. Yngvar, and he'll give like a respectful bow, not as low as you'd like, but well enough. And he'll say, "Greetings. I assume you are Jarl Yngvar. I'm Horde Son of Rock."
I know of your father, famous man.
He nods. He waits for me in Valhall now. Or he'll wait a while, I hope.
He waits for all of us.
He does that. He nods to you at that, Ygritte, and then looks back to you, Yngvar. I'd expected your coming. I hope that you were here to seek passage to my lord than to fight me and my men. He looks across you like warriors. They seem hard foes, and he looks back to his own men, obviously wondering if they're up to it. A man of like few veneers, he seems. He strikes you as immediately.
Hmm. He would look. We don't come for violence. Only to clarify, this is an unfortunate misunderstanding. As far as we have been concerned, and as far as we understand, this part of the river and south of it is part of Helagaskr. We don't want any sort of misunderstanding with your Jarl, and best to talk about these things as soon as they happen, I think, so that no more mistakes can be made.
Talking's good, though my ears don't hear so well all the speeches of lords. I'll gladly take you with him, but I cannot stop our work upon your word, lord. You must understand, he says, with a slight amount of caution, but like obviously more for his men than of himself. It's not that mewling tone. It's like a coward sniveling for themselves. It's obvious to him that 9 riders would ride down these 12 men who have been hard at work for the last week.
Yeah. I would expect my men to do the same, or at least hope that they would do the same. If I gave them a task, they would stick to it and not be told no. So I can respect that, but it will be a shame if we come to an agreement that you have to take this tower down again. It'll be a lot of wasted work. horrid son of frog.
My father would say no work is wasted. So if you'll forgive these men and your oath not to harbour retribution against them, I'll lead you to my lord at once, he'll say, wiping his brow and like throwing down his hatchet near like where some of the other gear is pooled at the foot of the tower.
He like looks around at the others to see if anyone wants to say anything.
Reik would just give a nod of approval. That your course is probably
Very good then. I appreciate the escort.
He'll give over some instructions to one of the other men who's obviously leaving as like chief or captain here, and he'll move wading across the river with ease and like known step, like practice step, I should say, and can lead you guys with your horses across. And the going will be leisurely, given that none of them have horses, so he'll fall in alongside you guys.
Yngvar will look at Ygritte as this man is like crossing the river, and I guess like quietly say, "This one, or someone else." You spoke with this one?
Yes, this one.
Good.
Yngvar, I think he saw when I spoke with him.
Okay. He nods.
That seems to make sense to you, given how warm, I guess, and respectful the guy is, but quite cool to Ygritte, and it explains the weird body difference, the body language difference, I should say, or disparity. So he'll like take you across. Oh, sorry, you go.
On the way, I guess Yngvar would like speak to him and say, "It's important to me that there is clarity. I don't want to arrive in your Jarl's camp with any secrets between us. They call me Yngvar Blackhand. I'm Yngvar Balderson. This is my sister, Ygritte. She was outlawed when she was younger, but she is my sister, and she is part of my crew. She is a part of my Jarldom. No, that is unorthodox. Many people don't like it.
My father would say you could fill Helheim with what people don't like, Lord, and it's no business of mine, he says, like staring icily ahead as he marches.
And what will your lord think?"
He'll think it a shame, Lord. She's pretty, he says, tight-lipped.
He like tries not to laugh at that, and tries not to be offended by it. But I think he just like doesn't say anything and spits.
Yeah, as he takes you inside of it, you see the Bard's Mouth is a stone fort that sits upon the western hills where the river called the Bard's Mouth, and namesake of the castle, meets the sea. It's a stronghold. It's obviously a favorable position. You can see it from a distance, like determine those traits of it. Any of you with practiced eye, it will be a nightmare to assail from the south. It controls the comings and goings of this river and seaway down into Braggy's Spear, and is a landscape much the same as your own, bar that which like girded the river, which was quite lush and full of life and sound, even in autumn. But you've left that behind and can come now within sight and smell of this holdfast, and where your own like raised hill and ditched palisade long haul surveys the town of Helagaskr. There's nothing outside of this like stony holdfast. It just simply is, and everything of it inside those ominous dark grey walls that loom even higher given its perch and the ascent you must take that Horde Son of Rock leads you up to. You can see signs of recent like destruction here, like signs of battle and siege recovery, burnt buildings, fresh graves, badly mutilated thieves or other criminals who like hang in gibbets or in like disgusting, macabre repose to warn off other thralls or ne'er-do-wells from those courses of action. It's a grim, foreboding place, and the people here more often than not show less cheer than Horde Son of Rock. They all seem respectful enough of your position and note you from your helm and arm rings as a lord of men. And so we'll step aside of your armed procession as you walk up inside of the gates, which are open and well guarded. And those men, after a brief word from Horde Son of Rock, will step forward and allow you entry into the place. It's not long before young warriors or squires, for want of a better word, come to take your horses and any excess garb. And you're taken by Horde and another mailed captain up into the bowed central keep of the Bard's Mouth. It takes a time to get to the ordained antechamber, though it seems longer from what you've seen. And inside here, not Spartan like Olvag would have kept, or like you've heard that how the Flamesower keeps it, but gaudy, trophy type arrangements of stuff cloyed in here that's been pillaged from around, adorn it in the way that some southern birds do their nests. And sitting at the head of a long table with a fine feast laid out before him, but no one to join him. The only other figures in this room stand off, armored guards with masks of steel. As this man with long grey, blue, black hair, braided and oiled well down the sides, sits at his early supper, and who will stand when the butt of the spear of Horde is rung out into the room, and you are announced by name. Thane Yngvar Blackhand of Helagaskr, my lord. And the guards with you will step aside as you and your small procession move forward, your footsteps echoing around the stony halls of this feasting room, too big for one man, though perhaps barely managing to contain his ego, given what, not chandeliers, but what's the word, candelabras and things of that kind of nature, ostentatious mead halls, southern trinkets gathered and shown off as Horde wealth. My Thane Yngvar, I'm glad you have come. You rule in the south. Forgive me that I did not know of you or your banner. I've not seen you in the battles of our lord.
Yngvar will incline his head, the exact appropriate amount, which is I realize that I'm not as big a lord as you, but I'm still a lord, and so we'll calculate that pretty carefully.
He notes it and gives a nod of approval.
We are most grateful that you would receive us, Lord.
Come, will you and your men and woman eat? I've much too much here for myself. And he'll gesture down, and it's now that you notice that these are stolen southern silver plates with Sciotaford imagery, and the fare that's put on this plate is roasted boar and fowl, not the end of autumn food stocks you would associate with frugal lord eating by this quantity.
We would be so grateful, thank you. And he'll step forward and find a place to sit. Very generous of you, and what a place. Stone Castle.
The southerners know how to do two things well. And you'll tear a piece of bread and put it into his mouth and chew while to watch to see what you'll answer.
Mule and flee?
One of those. They flee well and they build well.
I have not been here so long. I haven't seen so many of their creations. And he's looking around at the scale of the place. Probably hasn't been in many places like this.
They say these are dwarfed by those in the King's Isles. Perhaps we'll be lucky enough to see them in our lifetime. Though will not be this winter. This winter will be peace.
So it would seem. Hard to imagine. All the crews sitting around, warming their arses by hearths.
Sailors will kill each other over winter if they don't kill somebody else. But the Flamesower is our lord and master, and we all must do what he commands.
Certainly. It's a good thing, I think. There could be trouble with so many of us in so small an area.
Trouble, he says, and at that, The door goes "Urgh," and opens inward from the other end of the hall, and a figure like silhouettes it, like flickering with the light behind before like stepping in. A tall, gaunt figure. Ormsaug will like look up and smile. Orthulf, my lord. And he looks to you guys. I had heard you'd company. And it's then like when he like looks in your direction of you guys and then back to his yell that you see that both of his eyes are milk, like they're just white. There's no pupils. And he's surely deaf. Blind, though he definitely looked at where you guys sat at the table. You can see now that bundled in his arms, not like the folds of his old man's like cloak or robes, there's like a little furry dog, like a Shih Tzu or some like dog like that. On a leash in his arms, it's like annoyingly so. Ormsaug doesn't seem to mind too much, and the old man, like in a crotchety fashion, will like kneel down and put the dog onto the floor and hold its leash taut-ish as it scurries its long toenails on the stone floor as he like slowly, with labor, makes his way towards you guys, feeling out with like a wrinkled and long fingernailed hand, like touching at the benches till he like finds a place nearby and looks in your general direction, Yngvar, as Jarl Rangvold introduces him to you as Orthulf Fitzgeg, and the blind man like nods at that. I don't know, my lord.
He will incline his head the sort of amount that he thinks is appropriate to what is clearly like a like what Reik is, if Reik didn't work for him, you know?
He's a sorcerer. I found him south of the White Line. He looks at him like marveling, as if he's like almost like a speaking about a thrall more than like a Galderman in that kind of tone.
Yeah. Yngvar is like nervous. Like he has a Calder who works for him, but the runes are like he knows what the runes are. Like they make sense. And it's like the good magic. I mean, he did used to like have a lover that was a witch. So he's not like freaked out by magic, but this man is particularly unusual. And so he tries to like keep it together and will look towards Ormsaug.
Ormsaug just like smiles at him out of his like retinue, at his retainer. Having a sorcerer is no small thing. And Reiki like sits down at the bench across the food from you in the same way that someone coming too slow out of a cold beyond, leaving the door open too long behind them, like colding up your room as he like sits down opposite you, dressed in like whites and greys, like black beady eyes set into like roomy sockets and long clawed hands like grubbing for food till he finds it in his blindness and pops it into his like sparsely toothed mouth, where you like read the runes and like discern what fate's been ordained by the Norns. They say sorcerers and men like him write the future or reweave what's knitted by the sacred three.
Yeah, outwardly, Reik sits with his usual stoic confidence, which is kind of eye this man curiously as he sits down, but in his mind, it moves with much more fervor than his outward appearance would show, as he tries to imagine what someone like this could do, what they're capable of. The runes that he knows are like powers of order. That they have specific causes for specific effects, specific meanings for specific purposes. It's a very orderly and organized system of power that he's moved himself up along. With the sorcerers, they revel in the chaos of things, in the unknown, and that lackness of knowledge, the lack of understanding of such things, would set him internally on edge.
Yeah, while the dog like growls in between being fed bits of like chicken bone by the clawed hands of the old man, and he stares at you. The dog growls at you, Anthrmnir, while he's being fed these chicken bits, and the old man like stares at you, Reik, with two bleached shells for eyes, while Ormsaug looks to you, Yngvar, and says, "Trouble? A lord's decree there'll be no trouble. What trouble do you speak?"
A misunderstanding quickly cleared up, I hope. Some of your men have come into my lands and have begun building. We spoke with them. They accounted themselves well, by all accounts. But nonetheless, I thought it would be best to come here and clear the air and be clear about where the border is to ensure that there are no misunderstandings. The last thing I would want is to cause any sort of misunderstanding between us, Lord.
I see. Well, before I peeled the law speaker of this place, I asked him the boundaries of this realm. He said the Bard's Mouth, that waterway to our south. I meant only to keep safe my lands by clearing that land at the mouth of the Drover's Wash, where so many of my men and bondsmen died alongside those of our Lord in the battle of that name. He says that like using it like a barb.
I understand, and there's no problem in that, Lord. Just need to be specific about where the border is. My understanding is that the border of my land is the southern bank of that river, where the forest begins, that area there. And that's where your men have begun building. The other side of the river, everything beyond, none of my concern. It seems a natural boundary, a natural border that is easy to follow and easy to put into the minds of all who will pass through. I do hope that many will pass through from Helagaskr to here and from here to Helagaskr.
Indeed, many must, for I know of our Lord's mind somewhat. And he's decreed that all of the lords of Bragi's Spear shall be henceforth known as Jarls at winter's start. And he like purses his lips for a brief moment, which tells you he doesn't necessarily agree with that, but won't argue. The better more so that he demands tribute from those Jarls by way of coin and food stores for the coming winter.
Yngvar,
I would ensure that way of passage by the erection of my watchtower. If it is true that it is on your land, then I would revert my men to my side and build our tower there to safeguard those pilgrims who would come in fealty to our Lord.
might I suggest, Jarl, that we share the tower, that we build a larger permanent structure and that we share it between us, a site of the border. That way we can ensure that both those heading here to the Bard's Mouth and south to Helagaskr have a clear path. Because that interests both of us.
Half the profits, but twice the surety.
Exactly.
He shifts his bottom jaw from like side to side, just letting the bottom incisors whisper past the tip of his canines, and locks eyes with you. If you will have your men fell wood and build a tower on my side, then we shall swap and share them as a sign of goodwill, and share the tolls we extract there, when you and the other Jarls of Bragi's Spear come north to pay homage to our Lord, and to keep safe our own people in the travel between our realms for days to come, maybe even to the days of our sons.
More than that, I think a road might be a good move, an intelligent decision if we could build a road and keep it safe and patrolled. Am I right thinking, Nick, that this place doesn't have a port? Like it's on the river, but it's not really a port, right?
That's right. Yeah, like the river's like broad here and like splits out to many places. It doesn't. I guess it would have like natural harbors or whatever. There'd certainly be fishing vessels and things like that. They're not like a proper port.
Yeah,
Not
so
like the one you burnt down half of in Helagaskr.
Yeah, but the one we hopefully plan to rebuild.
Yep. But for hundreds of years, this place has stood, and people have come here for tribute to it from like the Bard's Mouth and Golden Fleece's lands, and so it's used the like satellite ports, I guess.
Yeah. So Yngvar would say as much, that we are working on the rebuilding and improvements of a port. And since we are so close, it seems only natural that we should share in whatever happens there. And if we can build a road between Helagaskr and here, all the better for those who seek to come here and give tribute and bring trade.
I think it right, though no man likes to build a road in the snow. Come spring, if I see that you have built a road to the Drover's Wash, I will equal your measure. Jarl, he says with a congratulatory tone with his ale horn, which is like 98% convincing.
Yeah, yep, it's enough. Yngvar inclines his head. I am glad that we were able to come to an agreement so quickly. You're most reasonable.
Reason takes two parties, and he gestures towards you. I seek to profit in this time of peace. And you can look at the man, and only for a brief glimpse, that's enough to confirm that that's true. Like he decks himself in silver.
Yeah. I suppose that's all we can hope for, all of us now. In a good way. These lands are rich and they're warm.
Indeed, we are fortunate, blessed by the gods and the actions of the flame sower.
Well, Lord, we won't trouble you too much longer. Simply came to try and clear the air and make sure that there was no misunderstanding between what was happening.
Of course. I'm appreciative of your foresight. I apologize that I did not know of you. If we'd fought alongside, I would not have forgotten you. Of that you can be sure. Tell me, Lord, what will you do now for the winter?
It's a good question.
He will seek life in stones long dead, Lord, says Ortholf, speaking for the first time since taking a seat. He gives the man like a hard look with a weird expression before turning back to you. And that uneasiness in his face belies that perhaps he thinks this man sometimes speaks sense and other times nonsense, but the sense is enough to keep him around.
Yngvar, I think, like, reflexively, like, grips the amulet around his neck.
He smiles as if seeing the gesture and looks through his lord. The dog stops growling at Anthrmnir.
Like, Yngvar realizes that grabbing the amulet now that he's done it is a giveaway. But he didn't think. And he'll look and say, "Your man speaks prophecy."
He does, and even sense some days. He's fed me well since we came south. He told me I would find a grey rock where three rivers meet, and there it would keep me safe a seat for my sons. And then he gestures his arms out wide like, is that not proof enough, Lord? But you notice, Ygritte and Anthrmnir, as you look at the milk-eyed man, that he doesn't have the same conviction as the smiling, greedy Jarl.
Ygritte will just look over at Yngvar with this look like, future telling's weird. But she is afraid to say anything to offend this sorcerer.
You seem a good man, Yngvar, so I will tell you this news well ahead of the telling. Lord Uther will have his tribute and homage paid by all who have profited in the south, and he will have it by winter's start. You should lay these things aside. By the effort of Jarl Uther's army, were you and all the other southern lords able to make yourself so, the families of those valiant dead from Bard's Mouth and Drover's Wash, those men of standing with nowheres below the hall to call their own, they too must have their due. This is the Coalbrander's decree. While he leads the rest of his host east to assail Gulnafjord, hold fast of the last Thane of Golden Fleece. He will mean to make this place a fortress to winter in, and has sworn a cruel death to that defiant Thane, and he shakes his head. A man who's not usually swayed by things terrible, which gives you insight into what fate awaits this one. Beyond that, if this man's any proof, and he points to Utholf, he will go no further till snow end. He is in agreement with the Mere Jarl, Skjalmod. This may be the first winter in a century that the Iskofen will not raid this western close. He has ordered peace here along. He shakes his head as if, it's a foreign thing for all of you, peace in the winter. That's when you go off and earn your keep for spring.
Yngvar will sort of part his hands and say, the sacrifice of all those men is not going unnoticed. We are Slofen. We are servants of Jarl Uthal. Tribute will be paid, and all will be given what they are earned. This is not something that is a surprise to me, nor does it seem a hardship. But I appreciate the advice that it will be soon. And he's basically trying to say, like, even though I wasn't there, I'm with you, you know?
Yeah. He'll smile, raising his cup, and make no further mention of the thing. As is proper, he'll give you the hospitality of his hall for the night.
Sleep in a bed in a stone castle? Oh my God.
Your horses will be washed and fed by thralls, and your own gear, if you order it, can be washed and pressed by thralls. Your hair can be combed and shorn, or if you wish, or deloused. You can soap up in hot stone baths and forget privation for a few hours.
Yeah, Yngvar will. I mean, he's vain, definitely. So he'll like take part of all of that and like try and live in some luxury before he goes back to like the shit heap that he calls the castle.
Yeah, some of I imagine a small measure of Ormsalg's dragon sickness like wipes off on you, as you see like men in mail stalking along parapets, or like thralls filling brass cauldrons with like hot water and things that a castle provides that a wooden holdfast thatched with like mud and dung cannot.
Oh yeah, yep. His eyes turn golden for a few minutes as he like stares around the place, and he like hisses almost with the worm sickness.
Ygritte, when they're kind of departing the hall itself, if Horde is around, would thank him for the escort.
I serve my lord and do as he bids, and treat his lordly neighbours such, he says, not meeting your eyes. I must return to my men.
She like
And then
opens
he
her
finally
mouth.
looks to you.
Yeah, she like opens her mouth a few times to say something and is speechless for once. It's rare that she finds someone she wants to defend herself to. Of course.
Yeah, he doesn't even accuse, so there's nothing to defend as he silently walks away. And the place is not as comfortable for you as it was for the others, or is.
Yeah, she's careful not to remove the scarf until she's well into whatever room with a real sturdy door and stone walls, and she just sits and kind of runs her fingers over the bumps, the edges of this scar, this brand. She like tries not to hate Yngvar a little bit because it could have been him.
And the barred mouth, as ever, just keeps flowing out to sea. and a new day will come tomorrow, and we'll find out what happens then next fortnight in Fire of the North. We'll leave it there. Thanks for playing, guys.
All right. Thanks, Lloyd. Thanks for watching.